Chapter 1879. Han Fei had thought that the power of his soul would rise to a short-term limit before he stopped. However, it seemed that his physical strength limited the continued growth of his soul power. However, no matter what, Han Fei knew that at this stage, he really couldn't continue to grow. The time for the tribulation was coming. At this time, it had been almost a month since Emperor entered the ideal palace. Of course, this was in the outside world. Since Han Fei couldn't cultivate anymore and hadn't come out yet, Han Fei glanced at the sky meditation garden, and with a thought, he took out thousands of fish bones from Forge the Universe. With the fire of nothingness, Han Fei refined them into bone pillars that were more than 10 meters high in the blink of an eye. And on these pillars, Han Fei drew visualization diagrams one after another according to what he had seen and learned. The so-called visualization diagram could be understood as a kind of spiritual perception of a superior. After engraving this kind of thing, it would become a visualization object. Moreover, this visualization object could also have a slight connection with the owner. Finally, Han Fei came to the Infinite Tower. Han Fei could feel that there was some power of Taoist runes on the body of the tower. These powers were the fundamental reason why people had been stuck in the tower and couldn't go up. Han Fei's heart did a flip. If the power of these Taoist runes was excluded, this tower could be climbed. Han Fei's figure moved and appeared on the top of the tower. However, except for a few square blue stones, there was nothing else here. Han Fei pondered for a while and casually took out an ultra-quality divine longsword from Forge the Universe that had just been refined. Han Fei held the hilt of the sword and sent a divine thought directly into the sword. Puff! The next moment, Han Fei casually inserted the sword into the blue stone, stepped on it, and a series of arrays appeared under his feet. The sword suddenly dimmed. Only at this moment was Han Fei satisfied. He said lightly, "I got the God-scaring painting by accident. It's good to keep it. In the future, someone will be able to break the infinite tower of the Sky Meditation Garden." The Sky Meditation Garden may become the most popular cultivation place in the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei held his hands behind his back and looked at the visualization fish bones standing up on the grassland. Then, after calculating the time, Han Fei decided to go to the ideal palace. More and more people had gathered outside the Sky Meditation Garden. In the beginning, there were only about 1,000 people, but now, there were more than 1,000,000 people. Everyone was looking forward to it. However, the Sky Meditation Garden was only so big. Luo Xiaobai got the news and arranged for a capable assistant to come and see what Han Fei was up to. Buzz, as soon as Han Fei came out of the Sky Meditation Garden, he saw a sea of people and it was overcrowded. The moment Han Fei came out, those who were sitting cross-legged or chatting came back to themselves. "It's Marshal Han. Marshal Han has come out. General Han has come out. Has the transformation of the Sky Meditation Garden been successful?" How. General Han. For a time, everyone outside the Sky Meditation Garden was in an uproar. Wild roars could be heard incessantly. Their shouts were full of admiration for Han Fei. As soon as Han Fei came out, someone rushed over and cupped his hands at Han Fei. "Greetings, General Han." Han Fei glanced at the 8-star token on him and nodded slightly. "Did Luo Xiaobai ask you to come?" The man nodded. "Marshal asked me to come and see what's going on in the Sky Meditation Garden. Because the Sky Meditation Garden is only so big and there are too many people in the Thousand-Star City, I must have a basis to enter it." Han Fei nodded slightly. Luo Xiaobai was thoughtful, so he nodded and said, "The Sky Meditation Garden has been changed into a place to cultivate the power of the soul. As for how to implement the management, you can decide. As long as the procedures are not too troublesome. By the way, let the first batch go in and observe first so that they can pass it on by word of mouth." "Yes, General Han." With that, Han Fei looked at the crowded crowd and said in a loud voice, "Everyone, listen up. From today on, the Sky Meditation Garden will be renovated. I have poured my heart and soul into rebuilding the Sky Meditation Garden. Today, anyone who comes can enter and experience it, but the rules can't be messed up. The Sky Meditation Garden will set up rules, and everyone must obey the management and arrangements. Okay, that's it. Let's go in. Oh! Charge. Don't rush. Don't block my position. Don't push. I'm flying. In an instant, the crowd surged. Although everyone admired Han Fei very much. After all, he was a high and mighty figure and wouldn't have too much interaction with them. However, the Sky Meditation Garden was different. This was a place for cultivation. After Han Fei's renovation, it would definitely be better than before. If they could seize the opportunity and occupy a favorable position, they might have a big harvest. Han Fei saw the crowd was like a school of carps crossing the river. He couldn't stop it at all. It was densely packed with people. At this moment, these people didn't call him General Han anymore. When they rushed up, they completely forgot about Han Fei's existence. Han Fei was a little annoyed. He had just received a large wave of wish power, but in the blink of an eye, it dropped sharply. It seemed that compared to himself, fated chances were more welcomed by the people. Han Fei left quietly. When he reappeared, he had already disguised himself and appeared outside the ideal palace. At this moment, outside the ideal palace, the gate was deserted. Everyone knew that the Sky Meditation Garden had been rebuilt, so they all ran to the Sky Meditation Garden. Here, Han Fei deliberately let Old Yuan out and said, "I'll go in for a while. It should be very fast. You wait outside. If my sister comes out, take care of her." Logically speaking, at Han Fei's current level, he shouldn't have entered the ideal palace. Because the power in the ideal palace was completely suppressed. Even though Han Fei was half a king, he was suppressed to the level of a hidden fisher here. The third soul realm, the Blue Sea Soul Realm. Han Fei stepped into it and his speed soared, not caring about the sea monsters along the way. Even though Han Fei's strength was suppressed, his level was still very high, and these sea monsters couldn't resist him at all. In less than 5 hours, Han Fei reached the deepest part of the Blue Sea Soul Realm. As soon as he arrived here, Han Fei felt boundless pressure descending. However, this time was different from the last time. Last time, he was really only a hidden fisher. His soul power and soul strength couldn't compete with this azure dragon at all. This time, although Han Fei's realm was suppressed, the level of his soul was completely different. It was not until here that Han Fei realized that the so-called soul suppression was only in terms of soul level and life level. Although the life level of this azure dragon should be higher than his current level, the quality of its soul wasn't much better than his. Therefore, this time, Han Fei didn't feel any life-threatening crisis except for a little discomfort. For example, he couldn't move his feet. In the darkness, the enormous head of a blue dragon slowly appeared. "You're here? Did you bring my physical body?" Han Fei smiled faintly. "I found your body. It's also with me." Roar! All of a sudden, the giant eyes of the Tsang dragon narrowed into slits. It said eagerly, "Where is it? Give me your body." However, Han Fei was indifferent. "I've brought the body, but we have to renegotiate the conditions." Then, the nautical panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand. The nautical panorama turned slightly, and when the pointer pointed at the azure dragon, Han Fei immediately realized that this azure dragon was the one that Zhao Xianglong didn't kill. This old mother said, this dragon was devouring energy in the chaotic void and was almost trapped. She was the one who saved it. However, it seems that she still doesn't know the relationship between this azure dragon and the dragon subduing heaven. And this azure dragon is very likely to be the culprit who caused the dragon subduing heaven and slaughtered the dragons. At this moment, making a deal with such a dragon? How could Han Fei be attracted by the so-called drop of azure dragon essence blood and the dragon transformation technique? For Han Fei, he was never short of great techniques. He even had so many great techniques that he couldn't learn them all. Besides, once he really entered the Void Temple, this dragon transformation technique, whose level was unknown, would be nothing. Han Fei said, "I found a body for you. But your reward is too simple. Do you know how much effort it took me to find your body?" Roar! "Human, you are violating our trust. Do you think I can't touch you?" Han Fei said disdainfully, "Don't threaten me. To put it bluntly, you're just intimidating this place with the pressure of your bloodline. Do you think you're great just because you're big? Believe it or not, I'll take your dragon body, take your bones, eat your flesh, and swallow your dragon essence. At this moment, Han Fei's fearless aura of a king was fully revealed. Threaten me? Even if you're an azure dragon, so what? I'll still beat you. Perhaps Han Fei's aura intimidated the azure dragon. Perhaps it was because it didn't have that much confidence. So, after pondering for a long time, the azure dragon lowered its voice and said, "Human, what do you want in exchange?" Han Fei smiled. "First of all the chaotic energy in your body belongs to me." "Impossible." Han Fei's eyes were full of ferocity. "Impossible, then you'll die." In terms of ferocity, how dare a mere soul act fiercely in front of him? Han Fei thought to himself, if I don't teach you a lesson, do you really think you're so arrogant? Chapter 1880. In fact, Han Fei didn't have to find the azure dragon at all. Anyway, the azure dragon's corpse was with him, and he could use it whenever he wanted. Anyway, he had mastered the dragon slaying technique. If there really was a problem later on, he could just kill the azure dragon and be done with it. However, this azure dragon had an agreement with him to guard the chaotic original water for tens of thousands of years. Its grudge with Zhao Xianglong was not the same as that with the Yin-Yang heaven. Therefore, there were things that could be done but not done. Han Fei had said that he would help it find the corpse after taking the golden page. Now, the golden page was obtained, and the corpse was found. Even if he had to use it, he had to use it openly. On the eve of the tribulation, although Han Fei wanted to get more chaotic energy, he didn't want to leave any obstacles in his heart. At this moment, Han Fei pointed at the azure dragon and said unkindly, "You want to get a corpse from me with just a drop of the azure dragon's essence blood and the dragon transformation technique? In this world, such a beautiful thing only exists in dreams." The huge body of the azure dragon slowly stretched out its entire head. The two stared at each other for a full 100 minutes. The fierceness surging from Han Fei made the azure dragon feel a lingering fear. This child was a completely different person from before. My pressure didn't have the slightest effect on him. It thought to itself, I'm afraid this person's strength has reached an extremely high level. At least, he has reached the point of preparing for the tribulation. Otherwise, he wouldn't need so much chaotic energy. After 100 minutes, the azure dragon finally compromised. You can take the chaotic energy. That's what you're after. I'll give you a drop of essence blood and the dragon transformation technique. Give me my body. Han Fei said, there's one more condition. The azure dragon said in a low voice, human, even dragons are not as greedy as you. Isn't it too much for you to ask for? Although I'm trapped, if I really go crazy, let's see if I can shake this world. Han Fei said indifferently, this condition is very simple. You need to tell me about the Dragon Clan and why the Dragon Clan is fighting with the human beings from the Yin-Yang heaven. After all, they are the human beings who summoned you. When the azure dragon was suddenly asked this question, he immediately had a bad feeling. Zhao Xianglong's soul ball had chased him for too long and almost killed him. Now, this person was also a human. Could he be related to Xianglong Tian? Song Long said, I don't understand what you're saying. Han Fei sneered. There's no need to pretend. I know what happened in the sky of subduing dragon. I'm also familiar with Zhao Xianglong. Right now, he was still trapped in a formation, unable to get out. He is him, I am me, I just need to know more about the Dragon Clan. For example, how did you get here? Do you belong to this era? Song Long asked, what do you want? I want to know what's going on outside the chaotic Azure Sea. You should know where the chaotic Azure Sea is, right? If you say you don't know, you can pretend I never came here today. Let's see if I can kill you or not. The Azure Dragon hesitated for a moment. The Dragon Clan did not perish in the endless flow of time. However, we are no longer as glorious as we were in the past. The reason why we came to the sky of subduing dragon is that the dragon control art of the primeval age was unearthed. And the people of the sky of subduing dragon cultivated this dragon control art. The Dragon Clan has a supreme bloodline. How could an ordinary human be able to maintain such a long lifespan? However, although they didn't master the essence of the dragon control art, they could summon us through the infinite void. As a result, you should know, the dragon clan was not convinced and naturally started a war. Dragon control art. Han Fei thought to himself, Zhao Xianglong still has a trick up his sleeve. He taught me the dragon slaying art but not the dragon control art. At least, it sounded like the dragon control art was a level higher than the dragon slaying art. However, Han Fei was not interested in the dragon control art now. Because of this dragon control art, Zhao Xianglong almost destroyed the entire sky of subduing dragon, causing the death of countless humans. If Han Fei learned it, if he encountered another enemy that was not easy to deal with, the Yin-Yang heaven would probably be destroyed. Han Fei said, "Where do the Dragon Clan live? Is it outside the chaotic Azure Sea?" The Azure Dragon said, "Of course, this world is very big. Although the chaotic Azure Sea is not small, it is still too small compared to the outside world. Outside the chaotic Azure Sea is the territory of the myriad races. There are thousands of races there. Except for the Dragon Clan who lives in the Dragon Palace and Dragon Valley, there are countless other races. Even in the Star Sea, there are strange beasts running rampant. Therefore, this dragon doesn't think that I will have any interaction with the humans here. Everything this dragon wants is to leave this chaotic Azure Sea." Han Fei wondered, "Can you leave?" The Azure Dragon said, "The Dragon Clan can travel in the infinite void. And in the infinite void, although you may get lost, you may also open a new exit. Although I can't leave from your chaotic Azure Sea, I can leave from the infinite void." Han Fei scorned in his heart. Back then, you were caught in the infinite void. Now, you want to leave from the infinite void? How can I believe it? However, Han Fei was not interested in how the Azure Dragon left. He said to himself, "You can tell me as much as you can about the outside world, about the myriad races, about the sea demons, and so on. Don't worry, I won't ask you for anything else." However, the Azure Dragon shook its head slightly. "I'm afraid I can't tell you anything." Han Fei was puzzled. "Why?" The Azure Dragon said, "The Dragon Clan has been living in seclusion for millions of years. What is the outside world you mentioned?" "I don't know. When I told you about the myriad races, I heard it from my elders. Although there were occasionally some dragon race experts who were unwilling to be left out and ran out. However, all of them never returned, and there was no news of them. Apart from the Dragon Palace, the chaotic Azure Ocean is the only place I've been to from the outside world." Han Fei, "Well, I asked for nothing. I asked a noob." Han Fei was speechless. Han Fei's intuition told him that the Azure Dragon didn't lie to him. Since it didn't lie to him, it was possible that the Dragon Clan was indeed a race that lived in seclusion. He asked a few more questions about the location of the Dragon Palace, but the Azure Dragon couldn't tell him anything either. Han Fei couldn't help thinking of the old turtle's words. It was a person who lived from the age of gods, but when it first talked about the Dragon Clan, it said that it had never heard of the Dragon Clan. It didn't even know the Dragon Palace. If the old turtle had known this news, he would have told him long ago. Seeing that the dragon didn't know anything, Han Fei was not interested in the dragon race, so he lost interest in it. He said, "I'll take your blood essence. Give me that great dragon transformation technique. If everything goes well, this place will disappear soon. At that time, I will return your body to you." The Azure Dragon hesitated. It didn't know whether it should believe Han Fei or not. If the chaotic chi was gone, it would be gone. What it swallowed every day was the black-yellow chi. The chaotic chi was just a natural power, and the black-yellow chi was its main means of combat. The dragon transformation technique was nothing. It was nothing more than a transformation technique that could give him part of the power of the Dragon Clan. In a place like the chaotic Azure Sea, even if this person learned the dragon transformation technique, what else could he do except to show off in front of his house? However, what the Azure Dragon was afraid of was that even if it gave it the dragon transformation technique, Han Fei wouldn't let it go. Han Fei saw the Azure Dragon's concerns and he said, "I'm not interested in you. I think you don't have to play dumb with me. You should know where your body is, shouldn't you? Why are you suppressed there? I'm just telling you that the river of time here is about to collapse. The eye of the heavenly path is about to disappear. When the eye of the heavenly path disappears, you will leave this place. Hearing this, the azure dragon said in a low voice, "Human, you will pass the king's tribulation. You should know the importance of keeping your promise. If I'm deceiving you, I will turn into an extraterrestrial demon dragon and pester you." Han Fei curled his lips and said, "Do you think I'm so bored that I came here to lie to you? Isn't it nice for me to use the chaotic chi in your body? Why did I come here to tell you?" The azure dragon thought, that makes sense. If Han Fei really used its body, it really couldn't do anything about it. The azure dragon opened its mouth and roared, and something that looked like a blood jade fell in front of Han Fei. Han Fei reached out and touched it. Immediately, he felt that a brand new and unknown dragon language rushed into his head. The azure dragon said, "If you want to learn the dragon transformation technique, you must learn the dragon language." Han Fei thought that he had just learned a great technique. It turned out that he had learned the dragon language. Can't you just say something normal? When the dragon language was imprinted in his heart, Han Fei finally sensed the last message in the blood jade. After it was gathered in his head, it turned into a great technique. Dragon Transformation Technique, Unrated. Introduction. The Dragon Transformation Technique is an inherited combat technique that has no level. The Dragon Transformation Technique can temporarily transform part of one's body, or even the whole body, into a dragon. After performing the Dragon Transformation Technique, the user can borrow the power of dragons and gain the power of one dragon in the same level. To perform this technique, the dragon language and dragon blood are required as a sacrifice. Deduction. Unable to deduce effect, all or part of the body will transform into dragons, and the user's strength will be doubled. Disadvantage. The Dragon Transformation Technique will brand the user with the aura of dragons. Note. This is a basic inherited combat technique of the dragons and has extraordinary effects. Chapter 1881. The effect of the Dragon Transformation Technique was beyond Han Fei's expectation. He didn't expect it to be a great technique that could double his strength by transforming into a dragon. Wouldn't that be comparable to a divine spell? After all, his invincible eye could only double his combat power. He thought that the Great Dragon Transformation Technique should be a great technique that all dragons knew. Come to think of it, this was probably the simplest technique of the Tsang Dragon. Although Han Fei wanted to blackmail it again, after all, the Azure Dragon was not a human. The Great Dragon Transformation art required the blood essence of a sky dragon to execute. The other great techniques were probably not simple either. When he left the Ideal Palace this time, he would just leave more essence blood of the Azure Dragon. Anyway, he would return the corpse of the Azure Dragon to it in the end. The trip to the Ideal Palace was very smooth, beyond Han Fei's expectation. From the time Han Fei went in to the time he came out, it took less than a day in total. When he left the Ideal Palace, Han Fei thought that his memory would disappear. However, when he felt that a force was trying to interfere with his memory, the demon purification pot moved and took back the force. Han Fei was speechless. If he had known this, he wouldn't have been afraid of losing his memory. Outside, the old turtle was surprised to see Han Fei come out. "You're so fast? It's only been less than a day." Han Fei said, "It's not a big deal. I'm going to cultivate and forge the universe. You wait here. It's been a month. I should be out soon." In the past, the old turtle was like a master, lying in Forge the Universe to cultivate. Forget it, it still thinks that it is the master. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei came directly to the corpse of the Azure Dragon. Han Fei grinned at the sight of the 1,000-meter-long dragon. Han Fei put his hand on the corpse of the Azure Dragon, and vines stretched out from the gourd in his palm. Han Fei said, "Absorb it." The old turtle was surprised. "Are you using the chaotic chi in its body? Didn't you say you didn't need it before?" Han Fei said, "Times have changed. Now, I'm about to become a king. Didn't you say that the chaotic chi was very useful? Then shouldn't I absorb it more?" The old tortoise was shaken to the core as he watched. He sighed for the dragon in his heart. "Just how bad is your luck? That's why I ran into a guy like Han Fei. Han Fei's swallowing speed was quite fast. In only half a day, when Han Fei's chaotic energy rose to 5,206 strands, the entire body of the Azure Dragon had withered. The old tortoise couldn't stand it anymore. He said, "You've turned his corpse into this. It's almost like he's going to turn into a snake. If you let it out later, are you sure you won't fight?" Han Fei sneered. "How can I be so stupid?" Han Fei roared, "Heavenly opening." At that moment, the apocalyptic divine technique descended, and the dragon's flesh and blood began to recover and absorb spiritual energy and energy from Forge the Universe spontaneously. In just a moment, the blue dragon corpse had turned into a blue dragon corpse with a terrifying aura and boundless might. However, with a swish, Han Fei began to bleed the Azure Dragon. He purposely formed a pond on the ground for the purpose of releasing blood. While bleeding, Han Fei walked around the Azure Dragon with a knife. Clang, clang, clang. After a while, there were 4 dragon teeth, 2 dragon horns, hundreds of dragon scales, and tons of dragon meat in front of Han Fei. The old tortoise asked, "Are you going to flatten it? Although your heaven awakening divine art is very powerful, it's still a new life after all. He has to nourish it with his own dragon origin energy. You can do this once or twice, but if you continue, this dragon will be ruined." Han Fei was stunned for a moment. "Really? Then forget it. It should be enough. I'll leave it a complete body." The old tortoise was speechless. Looking at the pool of dragon blood and hundreds of tons of dragon meat, if you didn't have the apocalyptic divine technique, this dragon corpse would be chopped into bones. Han Fei patted the dragon corpse, making 2 thunderous roars, and said leisurely, "It's not bad. It's quite solid." The old tortoise. Half a month later, Han Fei really couldn't stay any longer. He had already read all the books he could read and all the spells he could study. In Forge the Universe, time could be accelerated, so half a month was more than a year. Han Fei's current strength had reached the limit. He almost went to the Immortal Palace to fight the Eye of the Heavenly Path. Another 5 days later. Suddenly, the old tortoise reminded, "The Ideal Palace is moving." Swish, with a swish, Han Fei appeared outside the Ideal Palace in an instant. Recently, the Sky Meditation Garden was overcrowded. Naturally, it was relatively deserted here. However, at this moment, the entire Ideal Palace began to shake. Above the Ideal Palace, a large area of blue light and shadow appeared. Gradually, this blue light and shadow formed a super large beam of light hundreds of kilometers in diameter, going straight to the sky. But what's going on? Is there something wrong with the Ideal Palace again? It must be General Han. The Sky Meditation Garden can't be squeezed in now. It is said that all the old visualization objects there have been removed. It is said that the new visualization objects can be seen on the same day, and the effect is 10 times better than the previous ones. Now that there is a problem with the Ideal Palace, General Han must be modifying it again. Hurry up. Go to the Ideal Palace and occupy a place. Damn, I missed the benefits of the Sky Meditation Garden. I can't miss the Ideal Palace. Swish, swish, swished above the sky, countless fishing boats flew up, heading for the Ideal Palace at full speed. However, at this moment, Han Fei's voice rang over the Thousand-Star City. "Everyone, stop heading for the Ideal Palace. People around the Ideal Palace, leave quickly. The Ideal Palace is about to undergo a major change. I don't even know what will happen here. Don't come over." As soon as Han Fei said this, those who were crazily rushing to the Ideal Palace were all dumbfounded. What's going on? Hasn't the Sky Meditation Garden been successfully modified? Could it be that there is a problem with the modification of the Ideal Palace? What's going on? A large number of fishing boats, like locusts, stopped in midair, not knowing where to go. With a bang, the blue beam of light seemed to expand, and its color became more intense. At this moment, everyone in the Thousand-Star City saw it. A blue beam of light, shooting straight into the sky. Han Fei had never seen such a scene before. That blue beam of light shot straight into the sky, unreachable. Han Fei had planned to catch up with them with his perception and take a look. However, when his perception went straight to the sky, he couldn't catch up with the blue beam of light even at the end of his perception. Boom! When a loud noise burst out, he saw a huge eye above the thousand-star city. The size of this eye was beyond Han Fei's imagination. It was no longer the size that Han Fei saw in the dark sky palace. This time, it appeared like the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. The entire Yin-Yang sky, 8 million kilometers, could be seen. Scattered Stars Island. Xia Xiaochan and Luo Xiaobai were gathered together, talking about some things that happened in the chaotic sea and supervising the cultivation of Yi Xian and the others. Suddenly, everyone subconsciously raised their heads. They saw that above the sky, there was a huge eye, and the pupil was flowing out with turbid magma-like flows. The Eye of the Heavenly Path? Xia Xiaochan and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. They had heard this name countless times, but this was the first time they had seen the Eye of the Heavenly Path with their own eyes. At this moment, on the Scattered Stars Island, the 36 towns, and the Level 3 fishery, countless people were looking up. On the back of the cloud whale, Tang Yen came out with a solemn look. Chao Tianji stood in the sea hundreds of thousands of kilometers away and headed for the thousand-star city. At this moment, Han Fei gave a second warning. Everyone near the ideal palace, evacuate. In fact, even without Han Fei's reminder, this movement had already exceeded most people's imagination. The people who were still rushing to the ideal palace just now all stopped their fishing boats and began to retreat. Someone exclaimed, "No way! Come on!" A while ago, the entire Yin-Yang sky was almost relocated. This time, there's a big eye? What's going on? Is it an enemy? This eye looks too evil. It doesn't look like a good thing, does it? What's General Han doing? Why did he create this thing? Swish, beside Han Fei, Ren Tianfei immediately appeared. Is the Eye of the Heavenly Path going? Han Fei shrugged. How would I know? However, it seems that Yin is about to come out. I just want to know if it's the River of Time that has disappeared now. Ren Tianfei nodded. From the looks of it, it's probably the River of Time. Han Fei asked, if the River of Time goes back, the Eye of the Heavenly Path should disappear, right? Ren Tianfei nodded. I think so, but I haven't experienced it either. There was a second explosion inside the Pillar of Time. And at this moment, a group of people appeared. Xia Xiaochan was relieved to see Han Fei and then asked, what happened? Where is Yin? Old Bai asked, where is Yin? Old Jiang asked, what's wrong with the ideal palace? Tang Yen asked, is this the Eye of the Heavenly Path? Immediately afterward, there were explosions again and again. The Eye of the Heavenly Path seemed to be just watching, like a bystander. This Pillar of Time lasted for half an hour and burst out a total of 7 explosions. After the last explosion, the weird mist outside the ideal palace began to dissipate. Brother, suddenly he heard a voice coming from the gray mist. Immediately, Han Fei felt a special power, which was the power of time. Thinking of something, Han Fei said to Xia Xiaochan, wait for me outside. I'm going. Before Xia Xiaochan responded, Han Fei had disappeared into the gray mist. Hey, Xia Xiaochan was about to shout, when she heard Ren Tianfei say, it's okay. The power of time has basically been extracted. Now, this little power can't stop him. The next moment, in the gray mist, Han Fei saw the time dragon carp and 2 people who were fusing. Who could it be but Yin? Chapter 1882. Sure enough, the existence of the ideal palace was never prepared for others, but for Han Fei and his sister. The exact same scene, the exact same process. He had gone through it once, and now had gone through it again. The old body and the current body merged. In this way, she could be regarded as a real modern person. This scheme that spanned a long period of time had finally come to an end today. When Yin's old body merged with the current body, Han Fei felt that Yin's strength was soaring crazily. In a short while, she broke through 3 realms in a row and directly reached the peak-level explorer. When she was at the peak-level explorer realm, she was stuck for about 10 minutes, and then Yin directly broke through to the realm of half a venerable. This scene was very similar to what he experienced at the beginning. However, at that time, he directly went from a junior law enforcer to a peak-level law enforcer. And Ian directly went from a junior explorer to a half a venerable. The nature was the same. It could only be said that Ian's leap was a little bigger. The time dragon carp glanced at Han Fei and said, "This long river of time has returned to the real long river of time. Even the eye of the heavenly law can't find the secret between you and your sister now. In a short while, the eye of the heavenly law will dissipate, and you can prepare for the tribulation." When he heard this news, Han Fei felt like his head was about to explode. Can I finally expand my sea? Han Fei was excited, expectant, and slightly uneasy about the sea expansion. He had never expanded his sea before. He didn't know what his sea would be like. At this moment, Ian's fusion had basically been completed. And Ian's appearance had undergone some rare changes. Her skin was even fairer than before. Although her facial features didn't seem to have changed much, they seemed to be a lot more delicate. She had also grown a little taller. Her could be said to be an ordinary and fresh girl before, then she could be called a beauty now. The problem is, you haven't noticed how much she has changed. Brother! Ian woke up and looked at Han Fei with complicated emotions in her heart. Finally, she smiled slightly. Brother, I'm back. Han Fei didn't understand women's minds. Even though he felt that there was something wrong within her, how could he care about this at this moment? Han Fei said, "Let's go out first." Swish, swish, when the two of them appeared outside the ideal palace, everyone's eyes lit up. Xia Xiaochan heaved a sigh of relief. "It's good that you're out." Luo Xiaobai, "Hey! Ian's strength has almost crossed an entire realm." Then Luo Xiaobai glanced at Han Fei. Han Fei was in the exact same situation before. Everyone knew that Ian must have triggered something big in the ideal palace. However, this was a more private matter. Unless Ian was willing to tell them, they wouldn't ask. At this moment, Han Fei and Ian looked up at the giant eye in the sky. Ian narrowed her eyes. What is that? The eye of the heavenly path has been suppressing the yin-yang heaven for tens of thousands of years. Looked at the river of time that had almost run out and looked at Han Fei. It's all because of this? Han Fei nodded slightly. At this time, Tang Yan said, "The eye of the heavenly path seems to be shrinking." Hearing Tang Yan's reminder, everyone noticed it. The eye of the heavenly path was indeed slowly shrinking. It was just that because it was too big, no one noticed it at first. At this moment, Ren Tianfei glanced at Han Fei and said, "Is it time?" Everyone couldn't help looking at Han Fei. What did Ren Tianfei mean by this? What did he mean by time? Although everyone was guessing if Ren Tianfei was asking about the sea expansion realm, they didn't say it out loud. But he didn't say anything and just waited for Han Fei's reaction. Han Fei took a slight breath. He slowly took a breath and said, "It's time." Then Han Fei looked back at everyone and said, "I'm going to the central holy city. The gray mist of the ideal palace is about to dissipate, and it's very close to the central holy city. You guys wait here for a while." Xia Xiaochan said, "I'll go with you." Han Fei shook his head slightly and said, "I'm going to the divine palace. That place may still be covered by the eye of the heavenly path. Wait for me here." Although it was a tribulation, it wouldn't be so fast. It didn't mean that he would pass the tribulation as soon as he passed it. First of all, he had to make sure that the eye of the heavenly path disappeared. Han Fei crossed 1,000 miles in one step. In a few steps, he disappeared at the entrance of the God's Memorial Tower. Xia Xiaochan stamped her feet slightly, but Ren Tianfei said, "When he passes the tribulation, we'll see it. But now it's really not the time to go there. Now, no one knows whether the divine palace is dangerous or not. If we go there, we may become a burden to him." Zhang Xuanyu took a breath. "Is he going to the legendary divine palace?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Trust him. He naturally has his reasons for going alone." Old Bai sighed slightly. "This kid has a heavy burden on his shoulders. If he can't become a king, who can?" As for Tang Yan and Chao Tianji, they didn't rush to say whether they could pass the tribulation or not. Han Fei had told them about the dangers of the outside world. If what Han Fei said was true, even if Han Fei could pass the tribulation and become a king, the number of kings in the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven was still too few. Therefore, they could predict that after Han Fei passed the tribulation, they might also become kings. They didn't want to compete for the chance to become a king first. In the central holy city, above the temple, Han Fei stepped into the teleportation array to the divine palace without hesitation. The reason why he didn't wait for the eye of the heavenly path to disappear completely was that the river of time had returned. Logically speaking, the eye of the heavenly path wouldn't stop others from going to the divine palace. Secondly, there was too much energy and spiritual energy above the divine palace. Last time, he swallowed everything here, but he couldn't even absorb 1% of it. Han Fei was afraid that the disappearance of the eye of the heavenly path would dissipate this power. If so, it would be a huge loss. Although this power was not very pure, there was a lot of it. Maybe his road to becoming a king was here. How could Han Fei allow it to dissipate between heaven and earth? However, when Han Fei appeared in the divine palace, a strong fire element instantly filled his body. Here, the energy was still extremely violent. But to Han Fei's horror, the eye of the heavenly path didn't completely disappear. At least, above the divine palace, this eye of the heavenly path still existed. However, it was getting farther away, and its size didn't seem to be as big as he had seen it before. Most importantly, when he appeared in the divine palace, there was no heavenly demon body. Phew, Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. As he expected, the power of the divine palace was dissipating. Boundless energy and spiritual chi were frantically dispersing in all directions, escaping into nothingness. Son of a bitch, it's all mine. None of you are allowed to run. Han Fei projected hundreds of figures in an instant. Each of the projections immediately created a large spirit gathering formation under their feet. Bim, bim, bim. However, to Han Fei's surprise, these large spirit gathering arrays began to collapse one after another as soon as they appeared. It seemed that they couldn't stop the dissipation of this energy at all. Damn it, this is my divine palace. Why is the spiritual energy dissipating? The old turtle said, "It doesn't seem right. Although I feel that a massive amount of energy is dissipating, it seems that a massive amount of energy is also pouring in. I don't know where this energy is coming from." Han Fei was slightly taken aback. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei's perception instantly scanned the entire divine palace. When his perception entered the interior of the divine palace where the source water was stored, Han Fei found that a heaven and earth natural array had been formed here, absorbing power from the void. The power imprisoned by the eye of the heavenly path seems to be the power gathered to maintain the existence of the eye of the heavenly path. However, the power gathered in the heaven and earth natural array has nothing to do with the eye of the heavenly path. It seems to be the real source of power of the divine palace. Han Fei turned his hand, and the nautical panorama appeared in his hand, but the pointer pointed to the void. Han Fei immediately took out the pestle of the heaven and earth natural array in the divine palace, and with a thought, he appeared in the palace in the center of the island. In front of Han Fei was the heaven and earth natural array that he had cultivated before, which was also the core array that controlled the entire Yin-Yang divine palace. Han Fei said, "The eye of the heavenly path has suppressed the Yin-Yang divine palace for tens of thousands of years. Even if this power is going to dissipate, it shouldn't be in this independent small world." In the outside world, the whole world was looking up at the sky. The eye of the heavenly path shocked the world. Ordinary people would never see such a scene in their entire lives. Amidst countless apprehensive and fearful gazes, a huge shadow shrouded in a white mist suddenly appeared in the sky. In the sky of the central holy city of the thousand-star city. Suddenly, a large expanse of white mist appeared. Immediately afterward, the mist began to dissipate, revealing a large expanse of red light in the mist. At that moment, a massive amount of energy and spiritual energy escaped. Heavenly fire? At this moment, countless people exclaimed. At this moment, The thousand-star city was scorching hot and full of spiritual energy, just like the Heavenly Fire Festival every year. For most people, this was an excellent opportunity to cultivate. At this moment, from the sky, Han Fei's voice resounded between heaven and earth like a great bell. Han Fei said, "My name is Han Fei. Today, I'm going to transcend the king's tribulation." Thinking that the spiritual energy in the Yin-Yang Divine Palace is thin and the energy is pitiful, I came to this world with the Divine Palace to bless all living beings. Chapter 1883. By the time the Immortal Palace appeared, the huge eye in the sky had already become very small. The eye of the heavenly path was supposed to patrol for the heavens. There was a problem with the Yin-Yang heaven before, and there was a power here that deviated from the heavenly path, so the eye of the heavenly path had been monitoring and suppressing this place. Now, the 7 soul realms of the ideal palace collapsed one by one. The river of time that had been cut off returned to the endless flow of time. The eye of the heavenly path was about to disappear. When the divine palace appeared, Han Fei no longer controlled the dispersal of energy and spiritual energy above the divine palace. At that moment, the energy storm emitted by the Yin-Yang Palace swept the entire thousand-star city in an instant. It was because the Yin-Yang Fairy Palace had accumulated too much power for too long. At this moment, it was like a leaking ball bursting out at an incredible speed. Han Fei knew that he had to use these powers as soon as possible. Although they were dissipating at a terrifying speed, he had seen Xue Fan's tribulation transcendence. Han Fei felt that the energy and spiritual energy stored in the Yin-Yang Palace should be enough for him to transcend the tribulation. In the thousand-star city, countless people shouted, "Marshal Han is invincible. Transcend the tribulation and become a king." Han Fei has already reached this point, but he still hasn't transcended the tribulation and become a king? King? There may be a king in the Yin-Yang heaven. For tens of thousands of years, there has never been a king in the Yin-Yang heaven. Is this curse going to be broken? On the Pure Sun Island, Su Yang cried and shouted, "Ancestor, do you see that? You won the bet. Han Fei is going to be a king." In the Heavenly Sword sect, the Heavenly Sword Master sighed. Sure enough, from this kid's understanding of the Sword Tao, who in this world can stop him? Li Tianxian murmured, "The palace has appeared. As long as he succeeds in opening the sea, the Pure Sun sect will rise again." Zhang Xuanyu said, "The so-called heavenly talents are a bit dim in front of Han Fei." Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't belittle yourself. Think about it. Who can become a venerable at this age? There is still time in the future. We should try our best to catch up with him." Xia Xiaochan said, "Xiaobai is right. It's not that you can't do it, but you lack opportunities. Those who could cultivate to the supremacy realm in the Yin-Yang heaven were rare in the chaotic Azure Ocean. If you were born in the chaotic Azure Sea, you would at least be a high-rank venerable by now." Standing next to Jiang Qin, old Jiang said leisurely, "I knew that this kid might have a bright future. However, I didn't expect him to be able to expand his sea in just a few decades. I still remember how naughty he was when he first became a spirit gatherer." Jiang Qin rolled her eyes at old Jiang and said, "Don't be so smug. I don't know who has been repeatedly amazed by him." Old Jiang was speechless. "Can I amaze him?" Apart from being able to see the outline of the Immortal Palace at the beginning, the Immortal Palace had descended into the world. But in the blink of an eye, the Immortal Palace was enveloped by surging energy. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Look, the Immortal Palace is releasing energy." What was General Han trying to do? Didn't he say he was going to break through to the monarch realm? How is he going to pass the tribulation if the energy is dispersed? Someone sneered, "What do you know? General Han is going to pass the tribulation. How can he not know the danger of the tribulation? Since he can disperse it, it means that he is not afraid of the energy dissipating." Someone wondered, "I wonder if the Immortal Palace can descend to show us?" Someone was speechless. "Look at your head. Do you see the energy surges of the 9 heavens? To put it bluntly, you can't even resist the impact of the energy. Do you still want to see it? In the 7 major sects, the presidents and teachers shouted, "All disciples, hurry up if you want to make a breakthrough. The immortal palace has descended. The spiritual energy is like waves and the energy is like tides. If you make a breakthrough now, you will get twice the result with half the effort." At this moment, hundreds of thousands of people in the thousand-star city were sitting cross-legged to make a breakthrough. And the number of people was still increasing. As for the immortal palace, it was like a red phoenix spreading its wings, hovering in the sky, dazzling but unapproachable. And at this moment, the steps into the sea in the level 3 fishery moved. In the thousand-star testing field, a few streaks of light rose from the ground with a swoosh, as if a murderous aura was soaring into the sky. Chirp, some red lights with murderous intent rushed towards the immortal palace. The emperor sparrow, little fatty, nine-tailed mantis shrimp, simp, and little gold leaped into the air and flew straight towards the immortal palace. Above the immortal palace, Han Fei didn't care about the return of the emperor sparrow and the others. All of them directly disappeared into the center of his eyebrows, including the emperor sparrow. After all, this was the great tribulation of the sea expansion realm, a real king's tribulation. Even the emperor sparrow, with his extraordinary bloodline, couldn't face the king's tribulation in his current realm. Therefore, Han Fei knew that he could only rely on himself for this tribulation. Even if Little Black, Little White, and the emperor sparrow could share some of the power of the lightning tribulation, it was only a little at most. Han Fei said, "Tribulation is coming." How terrifying was the king's tribulation? In addition to the thousand-star city, the 36 towns, and the scattered stars island all saw a red star appear in the sky in the daytime. Accompanied by the star, a dragon roar sounded. It was Han Fei's shout. "Tribulation is coming." On the scattered stars island, everyone spontaneously stopped what they were doing and looked up. Although they couldn't see anything clearly, they could see that a huge halo had formed around the red nebula. How far away was it? Perhaps it was millions of miles away? It was also clearly visible. When tribulation clouds began to gather over the boundless sky of the thousand-star city, it was as if the end of the world had come. The sky was covered by black clouds, and the day turned into night. The brightest thing in the night was the red light spot in the sky and the halo around it. Even Ren Tianfei looked shocked. This tribulation is extraordinary. It covers a range of tens of thousands of kilometers, and the tribulation clouds are still condensing. I wonder what countermeasures he has prepared? At this moment, Han Fei stood proudly in the sky 100 kilometers above the immortal palace. The old turtle said, "Remember, the king's tribulation has 9 levels. If you can't bear it, don't resist it. You'd better prepare your vitality-type spirit fruits. Don't waste the heavenly awakening divine technique." Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, how do I use the chaotic chi? You've helped me accumulate so much. I have to know how to expand my sea, right?" The old turtle said, "I don't need to teach you. The heavenly tribulation you experience will tell you. You'll understand when and how you'll do it. Everyone's situation is different. So, I can't explain it to you now. You can only comprehend it in the heavenly tribulation. Even if you can't expand your origin sea well during the heavenly tribulation, you can make up for it later. Surviving the heavenly tribulation is the most important thing. I'm going to concentrate. Otherwise, a bolt of lightning will kill me." Damn. Han Fei took a deep breath and looked at the dim but surging tide of the heavenly tribulation. He was nervous. After all, this was the first heavenly tribulation. After the heavenly tribulation, he would become a king. Old Han's years of planning, his years of pursuit, and countless people's years of expectations were about to come. After more than 10 minutes, thunder was already rolling in the sky. However, the rolling thunderbolts were clearly purplish-red in color. "Hiss," Tang Yen said. "He won't start with a purple heavenly tribulation, will he?" Ren Tianfei shook his head. "I don't think so. Those purple heavenly tribulations are gathering. If he starts with a purple heavenly tribulation, it will be ridiculous. Who can resist it?" After all, Ren Tianfei had once reached the king realm. At that time, he didn't turn purple until the last bolt of lightning. So, he had an estimate in his heart. On the other side, Luo Xiaobai held Xia Xiaochan's hand and said, "It's okay. Relax. You know this guy. It's just a heavenly tribulation. It won't be difficult for him." Lu Renkuang wiped the sweat off his head, swallowed, and said, "Nothing must happen to him. I believe in Han Fei's physique. As long as he doesn't resist the 9 heavenly tribulations, he will be fine." Zhang Xuanyu looked solemn and nodded heavily. Clasped her fists. However, her eyes were extremely firm. She seemed to remember something in the Age of Doom. At this moment, she just gritted her teeth and firmly believed that Han Fei could survive this heavenly tribulation. Boom! Just as everyone was feeling apprehensive, they saw hundreds of lightning bolts descend from the sky. Among them, the thickest one fell on Han Fei. In the sky, Han Fei's power burst out and the pure mystic body was activated. Heavenly tribulation was a test of the heavenly Tao. If one wanted to be an invincible person, he had to bear the heavenly tribulation that no one could bear. This was a very simple truth. In the 100-meter-long lightning pillar, Han Fei's battle suit was instantly turned into powder. But Han Fei was not afraid at all. Every pore on his body surface was crazily devouring the power of the heavenly tribulation. From the moment he started the heavenly tribulation, it meant that Han Fei's bottleneck had been broken. The reason why some people could become pseudo-kings was that they failed halfway through the heavenly tribulation. And at this moment, Han Fei's whole body was full of blood, and he was pressed down by the lightning for more than 100 kilometers. On the surface of his body, there were many scorched bruises, and his fur was overflowing with blood. His 5 internal organs were all surging with lightning. Huff! Han Fei withstood the first bolt of lightning, but the expression on his face was not very good. It was not that he hadn't passed the heavenly tribulation of a king, but his heavenly tribulation seemed to be terrifyingly strong. At that time, Xue Fan's first heavenly tribulation was much weaker than this. In the chaotic ocean, his strength had doubled, and his physique and bloodline had improved by several levels. When he withstood the first bolt of lightning, Han Fei was still slightly injured. It could be seen how powerful this heavenly tribulation was. Han Fei couldn't imagine. If the first bolt was this powerful, what about the rest? Chapter 1884. After experiencing the first heavenly tribulation, Han Fei didn't feel the enlightenment that the old turtle said. Han Fei only knew that from the moment he passed the heavenly tribulation, his potential seemed to be growing. This was a wonderful feeling in his heart. At this time, Han Fei's body was like a river that was constantly being opened. Although the speed of opening was very fast, the speed of filling energy was also very fast. A holy light technique descended, and before Han Fei's minor injuries were healed, he saw the second heavenly tribulation falling. However, to everyone's surprise, Han Fei's second heavenly tribulation was a mixture of 2 colors, and there was already a lavender color in the heavenly tribulation. What? The second heavenly tribulation is already purple? Not good. This heavenly tribulation is more powerful than I thought. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation. It's so far away, but I can still feel its power. Han Fei had expected that something was wrong at that time. Suddenly, Han Fei roared, and the pure mystic body twisted frantically. 10,000 spirit fruits appeared around him, and they instantly crumbled into pieces. Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked, and the energy of the spiritual fruits all entered his body. Han Fei's bloodline was constantly growing, and his whole body rose 500 kilometers with a swish, facing the heavenly tribulation. Rumble! The blood energy that Han Fei condensed into the sky didn't even hold for half a minute and was smashed into pieces. The heavenly tribulation enveloped Han Fei. The pure mystic body directly stirred the violent power of the heavenly tribulation into a vortex. After a full 5 minutes, Han Fei retreated 300 kilometers and barely resisted this heavenly tribulation. Although Han Fei blocked this heavenly tribulation, there was a crackling sound of thunder on his body. Han Fei bled from his 7 apertures and instantly scabbed. A small portion of his outer skin had been destroyed during this tribulation. When the heavenly awakening divine technique descended, Han Fei's body quickly recovered completely. However, this terrifying heavenly tribulation still shocked Han Fei. Han Fei thought that he had seen the heavenly tribulation, so he was already prepared to resist the heavenly tribulation head-on this time, trying to strengthen his body throughout the heavenly tribulation. However, Han Fei didn't expect that his heavenly tribulation would be so terrifying. This level was almost on par with the power of Xue Fan's sixth tribulation. But fortunately, Han Fei was no longer shaken by this kind of heavenly tribulation. Unless the level of the third heavenly tribulation could directly soar to the level of Xue Fan's ninth heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, he could still take it head-on. Sizzle, the lightning in the sky was like a dragon, surging and shaking. In the thousand-star city, hundreds of millions of people looked solemn and shocked. Many people had doubts in their hearts. Can this thing really be blocked by human strength? Boom! The third heavenly tribulation had almost turned into a pure purple color. Han Fei had almost gone crazy. He rose to the sky again and roared, "What can you do to me?" At that moment, the spiritual fruits turned into a sky full of red clouds and followed Han Fei closely like rain. Han Fei, on the other hand, opened his arms, and golden light surged from his body as he embraced the heavenly tribulation. Sizzle, 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 boom, boom, boom. At this moment, Han Fei had been covered by the purple light. The tide of energy of the spiritual fruit had been drained by Han Fei. However, when the third lightning tribulation passed, Ren Tianfei, Xia Shaochan, and the others were shocked to see that some fine cracks appeared on Han Fei's body. Although these cracks were not deep, this was only the third fucking heavenly tribulation. Tang Yen was horrified. He himself had passed the king tribulation. To put it bluntly, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation was already as strong as the 8 lightning tribulations that killed him. Tang Yan's face was solemn. How strong is Han Fei? How could he attract such a terrifying king tribulation? And Chao Tianji was even more shocked. He hadn't even passed the heavenly tribulation. Seeing Han Fei's heavenly tribulation this time, he was wondering if he could resist such a heavenly tribulation. For example, he didn't think he could withstand the heavenly tribulation just now. Zhang Xuanyu's face changed. "Shaochan, can your body take it?" Xia Shaochan nodded heavily. "Yes." Lu Renkuang let out a long sigh of relief. "That's good. My scalp is freezing." However, Xia Shaochan was also worried. Although she knew that Han Fei had great potential and there was no reason why he couldn't pass the king tribulation since he could even obtain the supreme inheritance of the martial emperor city, she still couldn't help but worry. At this time, 2 women had appeared in this place. Joan Ling stood on the roof where her home used to be. He Xiaoyu stood among thousands of people. At this moment, she clenched her fists and watched this scene. Jing stood in the sea cloud tower, watching the heavenly tribulation. The heavenly sword sect. Tang Gu and Mu Ling stood on the hidden sword pavilion. Mu Ling comforted him. "He is no longer the Han Fei of the past. You should trust him." Tang Gu nodded. "I know. I trust him." The heavenly awakening divine technique came again. However, Han Fei's injuries hadn't fully recovered yet. The fourth lightning came. This time, there was no shadow of the ordinary lightning at all. The lavender lightning seemed to crack the sky. Rumble, this time, Han Fei's face changed greatly. When he found that the power of the spiritual fruits around him was not enough to repair his vitality, he immediately roared. A total of 11 dragon blood fruits were all shattered. The dragon blood fruit was originally a fruit for body strengthening, but at a critical moment, it could also promote the body's absorption of energy. Although Han Fei's strength was rapidly increasing, the speed of his body's absorption was far slower than the destruction caused by the lightning bombardment. Therefore, Han Fei had to use some kind of power to block the heavenly tribulation, replenish his vitality, or speed up the absorption of energy. Although ordinary spiritual fruits were effective, they were far from enough in terms of speed. But the dragon blood fruit was enough. Of course, he couldn't just use the dragon blood fruit. Han Fei still had some earth vein spring water that he hadn't used yet. At this moment, with a splash, they all poured out. Infinite vitality directly enveloped Han Fei. When the fourth lightning dissipated, some of the power of the earth vein spring water still remained in the void. Of course, Han Fei was still injured. At the moment when the heavenly tribulation dissipated, Han Fei smashed down with a heavenly awakening divine technique. While using the heavenly awakening divine technique, he absorbed the power of the earth vein spring water. In less than 2 seconds, Han Fei finally caught his breath. At this moment, Han Fei's injuries were completely recovered. The earth vein spring water was also completely absorbed by Han Fei. Of course, Han Fei knew that he had to continue to bear the power of the heavenly tribulation head-on. Maybe he had to start using the important resources he had. All of a sudden, Han Fei sensed that the chaotic energy in his body began to move. The chaotic energy began to entangle, as if it were trying to open a mysterious door. Han Fei couldn't help but think of what the old turtle said. He said that he would know how to expand the sea when he went through the heavenly tribulation. Now, the chaotic energy moved on its own and was moving to his dantian. And in his dantian was his Tao seed. Even now, Han Fei still didn't know how to expand the sea. However, it didn't matter. The next heavenly tribulation was coming. It was more important to pass the heavenly tribulation first. This time, Han Fei took out more than 30,000 spiritual fruits again. At the same time, he also took out a large amount of demonic chi essence to replenish his vitality. Boom! When the fifth heavenly tribulation arrived, the light purple lightning had begun to turn purple. Above the sky, there was crimson. When the spiritual fruits and the demonic chi essence were all annihilated by the heavenly tribulation, Han Fei suddenly felt that the chaotic energy suddenly drilled into the Tao seed. His mind was suddenly separated. Han Fei seemed to see a barren land. This was a barren land only about 100 meters in size. However, after the chaotic energy poured in, this barren land was opening up. The land seemed to become fertile. Some water seeped out of the barren land. Han Fei thought to himself, is this the so-called origin sea? Isn't it too small? The speed of the chaotic energy entering was not fast. On average, only 2 or 3 strands could enter in one breath. According to this speed, when the heavenly tribulation was over, he wouldn't be able to stuff all the chaotic energy into the origin sea. However, Han Fei had another feeling. He seemed to be able to open up this space. When going through the heavenly tribulation, he could multitask. So, part of Han Fei's mind was immersed in this barren land, and the other half was resisting the heavenly tribulation. Crack, crack, cracks. After about 2 minutes, Han Fei found that the vitality brought by the power of the spiritual fruits and the essence of demonic chi had basically been consumed. With a thought, Han Fei took out the heavenly false star fruit. This was the treasure he robbed in the Grand Purity Palace. The heavenly false star fruit also contained 30 strands of chaotic energy. After taking it, there was a certain chance that the bloodline power in his body would be activated. However, Han Fei's bloodline was not activated, but it was triggered by the heavenly false star fruit. It was a pity that although this fruit was powerful, it only worked for about half a minute. Its overall strength was completely depleted. And after half a minute, Han Fei's body cracked. Golden blood was disintegrating and dissipating. At this point, the fifth heavenly tribulation was past. Han Fei smiled bitterly and found that there were only 5 heavenly tribulations. Out of the hundreds of thousands of spiritual fruits he had collected, there were now less than 50,000 left. These 50,000 spiritual fruits could only be consumed at one time during the 6th heavenly tribulation. The apocalyptic divine technique descended at all costs, and the cracks on Han Fei's body were healing rapidly. Golden blood intertwined in the void and flowed backward. After transcending this heavenly tribulation, Han Fei suddenly found that the speed of the chaotic energy flowing into the origin sea he had created was twice as fast. If only 3 strands of chaotic energy could drill into it in 1 minute. Now, 6 strands of chaotic energy could drill into it in 1 minute. However, even so, it was still too slow. Han Fei saw that the origin sea was expanding, but at a shocking speed. It could only open up a few dozen meters in 1 minute. Damn, who are you kidding? Everyone else's origin sea is thousands of kilometers long. My origin sea is only a few hundred meters long? Are you kidding me? Han Fei thought to himself, the degree of the heavenly tribulation should be directly related to the speed of the origin sea's expansion. Of course, in addition to the automatic expansion of the origin sea, the other half of Han Fei's divine sense moved. Grabbing a strand of chaotic energy that spilled in, Han Fei roared and slashed at the boundless black fog that wrapped the origin sea. The black fog was cut out to a radius of 1,000 meters. Not bad. Chapter 1885. Han Fei seemed to have found a way to open up the origin sea. However, his method seemed a bit clumsy. The opening of the origin sea reminded Han Fei of the expansion of Forge the Universe. The opening of the two seemed to be the same. However, one was based on the demon purification pot, and the other was based on his own Tao seed. But the origin sea was not the demon purification pot after all, so Han Fei could only try his best to open it bit by bit. At this moment, the sixth heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. Although the healing speed of the Apocalypse divine technique was fast, it couldn't heal Han Fei's seriously injured body in just a few seconds. Therefore, Han Fei released all the spiritual fruits in advance. These were all the resources that Han Fei had accumulated in the chaotic ocean. It would be good if he could resist the sixth heavenly tribulation with these resources. After all, while resisting the heavenly tribulation, the energy of these energy fruits and the energy of the heavenly tribulation were almost all absorbed by him. The heavenly tribulation was both a tribulation and a way to grow on the way to becoming a king. Han Fei knew that the vitality and gentle energy provided by 50,000 spiritual fruits were not enough. Therefore, Han Fei couldn't help but hold a small bottle in his hand. Crack! As Han Fei crushed it, the small bottle broke. A pill engraved with 3 Taoist patterns appeared in Han Fei's hand. Who was the best alchemist here? Old Jiang was the best. However, when he saw the pill in Han Fei's hand, he couldn't help but be surprised. Is that a tribulation pill? A tribulation pill that has gone through the heavenly tribulation? Xia Xiaochan clenched her fists nervously. At this moment, she tried to calm herself down and said, a Tao pattern pill with 3 Tao patterns has gone through 3 heavenly tribulations. However, I don't know if he can withstand such a powerful heavenly tribulation. Lu Renkuang nodded. Surrounded by spiritual fruits and this tribulation pill, he should be able to resist it, right? Zhang Xuanyu sighed. This king tribulation is too terrifying. How many spiritual fruits has Han Fei prepared for this heavenly tribulation? Ren Tianfei said, he just chose to resist it head-on. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have had to consume so many resources. Resist it head-on? Everyone couldn't help but look at Ren Tianfei, puzzled. This was also what they didn't understand. Was it really better to resist the tribulation with the help of tools? Ren Tianfei said, the heavenly tribulation is the purest killing force in the world. It represents the heavenly Tao. Similarly, because the heavenly tribulation was extremely pure, it also contained an enormous amount of power. Every time a heavenly tribulation descended, any part of it absorbed by the body would transform the body of the person undergoing the tribulation. And the more heavenly tribulation your body absorbs, the more power and potential you'll have after becoming a king, the more powerful you'll be compared to a king who uses artifacts to block the heavenly tribulation. Zhang Xuanyu asked, doesn't that mean whoever has a stronger physique will be stronger after the king tribulation? In the future, they will be far ahead of those who don't transcend the tribulation with their bodies? Ren Tianfei shook his head. No, you can't say that. Transcending the tribulation with one's physical body could only make one stronger than others after transcending the tribulation and becoming a king. However, becoming a king was an upgrade of one's level of existence and bloodline. Bloodline and life level were the foundation. If one's foundation was not as good as others, then even if one's physical body underwent tribulation, others would still catch up to them in the future. This is potential. Oh, even Tang Yen and Ren Tianfei didn't quite understand what Ren Tianfei said. Although they had guessed it in their hearts, they were not kings after all. Therefore, they couldn't understand the difference between kings at all. At this moment, after being pointed out by Ren Tianfei, they finally understood. Luo Xiaobai said, He has already resisted the sixth heavenly tribulation with his body? Is he going to endure the whole tribulation? Hearing Luo Xiaobai's words, everyone fell silent. According to Han Fei's personality, it was very likely. Rumble. While they were communicating quickly, countless purple lightning veins descended. The thickest one was completely purple lightning. Even this, tens of thousands of kilometers away, was also covered by black clouds. Within 100,000 kilometers, above the sky, there was a gust of wind and lightning intertwined. It seemed that the quality of the lightning was getting stronger and stronger. Perhaps there was another reason. The power of the heavenly tribulation of the yin-yang heaven was not enough, so it covered a wide range and needed to absorb power from a larger range. Therefore, when Han Fei transcended the tribulation, the noise was particularly big. 3 tribulation pills entered his body. In an instant, Han Fei's body was filled with the power bursting out of the pills. This power overflowed crazily from his body, helping Han Fei's body to resist the heavenly tribulation. Of course, energy was not the key. The triple Tao pattern pill was a pill that had experienced the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, swallowing it at this time could give Han Fei a lot of power of the great path in a short period of time. Although this was not his own great path, it was just a manifestation of the Tao of heaven and earth. But even so, it stimulated Han Fei's body to the most resilient state in an instant. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. At the 3rd second, the power provided by all the spiritual fruits was exhausted by Han Fei. At the moment when the vitality provided by the spiritual fruits completely disappeared, in the heavenly tribulation, Han Fei shouted, "Heavenly awakening divine technique." This time, Han Fei couldn't care less. He used the 1,000-year vitality on himself. Together with the triple Tao pattern pill, he protected his body and forcibly persisted in the heavenly tribulation. When the 6th heavenly tribulation dissipated, Han Fei panted and cursed, "Son of a bitch, it completely surpassed Shui Fan's 9th heavenly tribulation. God, are you kidding me?" Han Fei recovered from his wounds, only to discover that the amount of chaotic energy that could crawl into his origin sea doubled every second. Now, about 12 breaths of chaos energy could enter the origin sea with every breath. Han Fei sensed the world in the origin sea, and half of his mind was trying to quickly expand this place. However, Han Fei found that no matter how fast he expanded, it was impossible for him to expand thousands of kilometers at once. Back then, when the water immortal became a king, he didn't expand so little. The divine sun expanded even more. It shouldn't be. I have passed the first 6 heavenly tribulations, so I should already know how to expand the sea. When the chaotic energy enters the origin sea, it melts here in an instant, so I can't intervene. Does that mean my mind can only slash out a few hundred miles? Suddenly, Han Fei's heart did a flip. He saw a small vine sticking out of the top of his head. This little vine was trying its best to burrow into his origin sea. Around the small vine, Han Fei also saw the buds of several other small vines, which seemed to be struggling to break through some barrier and wanted to drill in. Han Fei? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. The demon purification pot could drill into his origin sea at this time? Han Fei thought, what does this guy want to do? Is he going to change places again? At this moment, Han Fei didn't have time to care about the origin sea. He could slowly expand the origin sea. Even after he became a king, he could still expand it. However, the 7th heavenly tribulation had already appeared. Han Fei saw a big lump of purple. Han Fei was dumbfounded at the sight of the purple blob. Damn, do you think this can stop me? Han Fei grabbed 2 jade bottles with both hands again. Crack, crack, with 2 crisp sounds, 2 third-level disaster pills appeared in Han Fei's hands. Han Fei clapped his hands to his mouth and swallowed 2 third-level disaster pills in a row. Down below, Xia Shaochan finally got nervous and quickly looked at Ren Tianfei. Big purple heavenly tribulation, this is a sign of a demon tribulation. Demon tribulation? Everyone looked at Xia Shaochan. Luo Xiaobai asked, what is a demon tribulation? Ren Tianfei said, there must be something wrong with the situation. Han Fei's heavenly tribulation has completely exceeded the level that a normal heavenly tribulation can bear. Every heavenly tribulation he has experienced now is comparable to the ultimate heavenly tribulation of ordinary people. The so-called demon tribulation is an unpredictable heavenly tribulation. No one knows how strong this heavenly tribulation will be. Gulp. At this time, everyone's hearts sank. However, among everyone, only one person had a firm look in her eyes. This person was Han Ying. She firmly believed that Han Fei couldn't survive this heavenly tribulation. Boom! The seventh big purple heavenly tribulation seemed to have erected a pillar of lightning between heaven and earth. In the thousand-star city, everyone was dumbfounded. There was only that purple pillar of light left in the whole world. The halo spread infinitely far away. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was not a heavenly tribulation at all. This was simply a heavenly tribulation. However, Han Fei roared, stepped on the void, and with a roar, he rushed to meet it. At the moment when Han Fei collided with this heavenly tribulation, the two tribulation pills in his body were exploding crazily, as if they were going to burst out at this moment. Shoot! Han Fei's face changed drastically. This heavenly tribulation even impacted his soul. At the same time, Han Fei also felt that the power of the two tribulation pills was not enough. Immediately, Han Fei knew that he couldn't delay any longer. In the heavenly tribulation, a 5-patterned pill suddenly appeared in Han Fei's hand. Han Fei only had one 5-layered Tao pattern pill. This pill was not used for transcending the heavenly tribulation, but to make himself stronger. Han Fei roared, and his strength soared in an instant. Double his combat power greatly improved Han Fei in all aspects except his combat power. Han Fei hadn't dared to use the power of Tao and the Invincible Eye, fearing that his resources would be exhausted. Now, to Han Fei's surprise, this was only the 7th heavenly tribulation, and he had to use a 5-patterned pill. Then what about the next two? 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. At the 4th second, Han Fei's 7 orifices were no longer bleeding, but blood was gushing out. Han Fei was horrified. His soul must not be injured. Once his soul was injured, could he survive this heavenly tribulation? That was hard to say. Han Fei didn't hesitate at all. He used one of the 6th-grade soul pills he bought in the Martial Emperor City without hesitation. As soon as the soul pill came out, it was immediately printed between Han Fei's eyebrows. Han Fei felt that his soul seemed to have been added with a barrier. However, the light of the barrier flickered and was extremely unstable. After 2 seconds, cracks appeared on the soul pill barrier. But at this moment, the 7th heavenly tribulation had also dissipated. Puff! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Han Fei didn't hesitate and immediately shouted, "Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique." Chapter 1886. Han Fei looked solemn at this moment. Sea expansion was difficult. The 4 vines of the demon purification pot had crawled in. As for the primal chaos aura, it could absorb around 25 strands of it in every breath of time. At this moment, the origin sea had become an irregular lake that was 50 kilometers wide. However, compared to the real origin source sea, wasn't this a little too fucking small? However, the demon purification gourd had entered the origin sea, which meant that there should be a way to open up the origin sea in the future. Now, for Han Fei, the key problem was that he had used up all the triple Tao pattern pills. He had also used up all 5 Tao pattern pills. Now, Han Fei only had 2 6th-grade soul pills and 500 caddies of deep-sea nether spring left. Of course, apart from these, there was also the energy and spiritual energy that was being emitted crazily from the Immortal Palace. Bang! As one of Han Fei's trump cards, Han Fei landed directly on the Divine Palace, and all the pores all over his body opened. Phew! As Han Fei's whole body was sucked in, he directly turned into a big cocoon of energy. A huge amount of energy and spiritual energy rushed at Han Fei's body crazily. Phew! Phew! At this moment, Han Fei's big mouth and the pores all over his body were like bottomless abysses. Almost every second, he could directly swallow nearly 1% of the energy and spiritual energy of the divine palace. The spiritual energy, after entering Han Fei's body, was not used to fill his flesh and blood, refine his meridians, or improve his bones and blood. These powers were only used by Han Fei to resist the power of the heavenly tribulation. Of course, after resisting, the two energies became gentle and could reside in his body. In Han Fei's perception, the absorption of the tribulation cloud had exceeded his range of perception. In the sky, the eighth heavenly tribulation was still accumulating power. At this moment, there were already signs of dark purple. Han Fei's eyelids twitched and his lips twitched. He grabbed another 2 bottles with both hands. This was Han Fei's last 6th grade soul core. The immaculate body was still running crazily, and the origin sea was still expanding. Han Fei felt that his physical strength was rising crazily at an extremely fast speed. Han Fei would rather stay like this for an hour. If it was possible, Han Fei felt that his strength would soar by 50%. However, the heavenly tribulation wouldn't give him this chance. The 8th heavenly tribulation came without warning. When the dark purple lightning fell, the sky was filled with lightning webs. Han Fei stood on the divine palace, not moving at all, letting the heavenly tribulation bombard him. Almost in an instant, the 6th grade tribulation pill that he hadn't used last time immediately collapsed. However, Han Fei didn't panic at all and used 2 6th grade soul pills at the same time. He no longer had the time to deal with the final tribulation. He had to overcome the 8th tribulation first. Han Fei roared, and his voice shook the world. Who wouldn't be moved by that furious roar? This was the only time in the history of the Thousand-Star City that someone had transcended a king-level tribulation. Han Fei's name had long been engraved in everyone's heart. No one wanted Han Fei to fail the tribulation. The stronger Han Fei was, the better the Thousand-Star City would be. The better the Scattered Stars Island was, the better the entire human race would be. Commander Han, hold on. Marshal Han is invincible. General Han, a mere heavenly tribulation won't be able to stop you. Marshal Han, heavenly tribulation is not worthy to be your opponent. Marshal Han, crack, crack, crack on Han Fei's body, cracks appeared one after another. However, Han Fei didn't care at all. Between Han Fei's eyebrows, a golden eye slowly opened. At that moment, Han Fei's roar resounded through the whole world. There are thousands of tribulations in this world, but only I, Han Fei, am invincible. The Great Tao is one. Swish, at that moment, Han Fei finally took action. Although his body was covered with cracks, he pointed at the sky. In the divine palace, the energy was like a tide, and the spiritual energy was like a sea. At this moment, it all turned into a sword, pointing straight at the sky, going against the heavenly tribulation. In the Thousand-Star City, the entire Yin-Yang heaven could see stars colliding in the sky. Whether it was the Scattered Stars Island, the 36 towns, or the Level 3 fishery, they could all see it. The sound of the king's Tao swept across the world. The heavenly water village. The old village leader climbed on the roof of his house, raised his hands high, and muttered, "Win." In the Blue Sea town, Li Gang led the entire fish dragons and was shouting, "Leader is invincible, leader will become a king." On the Scattered Stars Island, the heavenly vine was waving its vines. The sky inspecting sword was already bald at this moment. The big sword seemed to be cheering for Han Fei. On the Forest of Horrors side, the strong masters had all arrived at the Thousand-Star City. To be honest, they had long been shocked. It was really hard for them to imagine that all the people in the world were supporting this person. Yet, this person was able to last until now under such a power that did not seem to belong to the human world. Was he still human? In fact, when the people of the Forest of Horrors were surprised. Some people from the Immortal City and the Demon Beast Alliance also came to the Yin-Yang Heaven. Before, Han Fei had promised to let some people come to the Yin-Yang Heaven to have a look. Who knew that as soon as they came, they would see Han Fei transcending the tribulation. On the Immortal City's side, Qin Xiang and several of Han Fei's former subordinates were amazed. This was the first time they had seen someone transcend the tribulation and become a king. It was hard not to see such a huge scene. Yun Tianhe exclaimed, "General Han is far stronger than we thought." Hua Meng said, "I heard that the Black Snail King couldn't even take a sword strike from General Han. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him. Otherwise, it would be enough for me to brag about for the rest of my life." Chen Xiang was secretly shocked. Is this Han Fei's real strength? It was ridiculous that she doubted whether he had the ability to become the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. He was actually the master of the Yin-Yang Heaven. On the Demon Beast Alliance's side, Jiao Mengyue, Xiong Chaoshui, and the others came over. Golden Tiger howled, "What a pity! He should have called all the half-king realm powerhouses to come and watch." Transcending the king tribulation, this is a grand occasion that is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Jiao Mengyue shook her head and said, "It's useless to watch. Have you seen the strength of his king tribulation? I guess from the third heavenly tribulation onward, no ordinary person can withstand it. When did you see the purple lightning when old Yang transcended the tribulation?" At this moment, Han Fei pointed his sword at the heavenly tribulation, and the entire divine palace was providing him with power. Just a single glance at such a domineering and wild attack was a little unbearable. Just then, dense cracks appeared on Han Fei's whole body, from his fingers to his whole arm, and then to his whole body. And the apocalyptic divine technique didn't stop at all during this tribulation. Even if the apocalyptic divine technique didn't stop for a moment, it couldn't completely cure Han Fei. After all, the Tao Convergent Sword was no match for the dark purple lightning, and it only lasted for 3 seconds. Fortunately, the power of hope of the human race was crazily penetrating into Han Fei's body. With the continuous consumption of the power of hope, Han Fei finally managed to keep his body intact. Otherwise, he would have been blown into pieces at this moment. Although his body was broken, Han Fei wasn't afraid. However, it would be a waste of time to recover. And now, what he lacked most was time. 3 seconds. For seconds. At the moment of the 5th second, with cracking sounds, Han Fei's bones were broken in many places. The barrier of the soul core was dim. The invincible eye collapsed. His third eye was damaged. Han Fei coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and finally held on until the heavenly tribulation dissipated. At this moment, Xia Shaochan and the others were most worried. At this moment, Han Fei didn't seem to be in a very good state. His body was covered with cracks. There were even a few terrifying cracks, as if his body was about to split open. Fortunately, the heavenly awakening divine art did not have an endless supply of healing radiance. It was also because Han Fei had swallowed the vitality of too many strong masters before. That was the only reason he was able to use the heaven awakening divine skill to heal his body without any scruples. Xia Shaochan shouted, "Idiot, don't take it head-on. It's already the 9th heavenly tribulation, so you don't have to reach the monarch realm with your physical body." Ren Tianfei bellowed, "Brat, although I said that your body can also reach the divine connection realm, it's still not enough. But you're playing with fire. It's going to be the 9th tribulation soon. It's enough." Old Bai and Old Jiang also shouted to remind Han Fei. However, creaking sounds came from Han Fei's body, which was the sound of his bones recovering. Han Fei said, "If I'm going to walk, I'll walk on the path of a real expert. What I want is to suppress the chaotic sea. What I want is to break the cage. What I want is to walk to the extreme and stand on the other side of the sea." Roar, Han Fei waved his hand, and tens of millions of ultra-quality spiritual stones were scattered on the immortal palace. Han Fei used too much energy and spiritual energy in the immortal palace just now. Now, only less than half of this energy was left. And to resist the last tribulation, Han Fei had to try his best. Huff, huff, Han Fei opened his mouth and swallowed like a demon whale swallowing the sea. In every breath, there was an infinite amount of energy pouring into his body. And the sky suddenly opened, revealing a crimson color. Is that a red heavenly tribulation? They intertwined above the sky. At this moment, Han Fei had no time to care. The intake of the origin sea had become more than 50 strands of chaotic energy pouring in every breath. Han Fei didn't notice that in the origin sea, a familiar scene appeared. Here, there was land, a big pit, a river, and fertile soil. Roar! At this moment, Han Fei suddenly grinned. In his dantian, the Tao seed and the great Tao trembled. Han Fei's overall strength soared by 3 times in an instant. Not only that, Han Fei shouted, "Fuse!" As soon as he fused, black and white colors burst out of Han Fei's eyes. Dragon transformation technique. A dragon roar resounded through the entire yin-yang sky. Han Fei's body began to swell. Immediately afterward, spiritual energy was like a hurricane, and dragon scales appeared in the storm. He turned around, and there was no one above the immortal palace. A black dragon hundreds of meters long, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, rose to the sky. People were amazed and exclaimed, "Is that the legendary dragon? Oh my God! Is General Han the reincarnation of a true dragon? So ferocious? Is this what a king looks like when he's facing the heavenly tribulation?" Rumble! Above the sky, bright red lightning was intertwining, making loud noises. When Han Fei turned into a dot in the dark, a red pillar fell from the sky, as if a line had been opened between heaven and earth, breaking through the starry sky. Chapter 1887. The moment the red heavenly tribulation descended, everyone closed their eyes. This weird power was so dazzling that it made their eyes swollen. In this case, only venerable realm powerhouses could barely open their eyes. However, even though Xia Shaochan and the others could still observe, Han Fei had been completely enveloped by the heavenly tribulation. They could only see a shock wave in the center of the tribulation cloud, about to smash down. As for the rest, they couldn't see anything. At this moment, Xia Shaochan, Zhang Xuanyu, Luo Xiaobai, Lu Renquang, Ren Tianf, these people's palms and foreheads were all sweaty, and they didn't dare to relax for a moment. Even Ren Tianfei was horrified. If he were in this kind of heavenly tribulation, he would be crushed into pieces in less than a second, let alone survive it. In fact, although Han Fei used the power of Tao and the dragon transformation technique, he didn't gain any advantage. Perhaps because he was a beginner, the dragon transformation technique only lasted for more than a second before it was beaten back to its original form. Han Fei's Tao was improved, but in the 3rd second, he felt that he couldn't bear it anymore and was about to collapse. The apocalyptic divine technique was still shining, but others couldn't see it. In desperation, Han Fei used the supreme yin-yang wheel. However, this method only lasted for half a second. Han Fei tried to use the Great Path of Time. However, the Great Path of Time couldn't be used at all here. At this time, Han Fei could no longer return to his previous strongest state. After finally holding on for the 5th second, Han Fei saw an invisible big shadow above the sky, which seemed to be rushing towards him from the heavenly tribulation. That scene seemed to be the demonic energy that the old turtle once used, and it seemed to be penetrating his mind. At this moment, the demon purification pot, which was opening up the origin sea, trembled violently. Han Fei knew that if he didn't use defensive weapons or arrays, he might not be able to hold on. Fine. Han Fei had planned to survive this tribulation in the most perfect state, relying on his body and his massive resources. However, he still underestimated the power of the heavenly tribulation, so he didn't prepare enough resources. If he had known this would happen, even if he had to sell his entire family's fortune, he would have bought it in Martial Emperor City until he had no more money to buy it. But now it was too late. With a thought, he absorbed the last 500 caddies of deep-sea nether spring into his body. Otherwise, if the power of his soul couldn't withstand the power of the heavenly demon, wouldn't he fail the tribulation? This was something he absolutely could not tolerate. The first 99 steps had already been taken. How could he let this last step be ruined? However, when Han Fei was about to activate a dragon bone umbrella that he had prepared for a long time, suddenly, his glabella flashed again. With a chirp, boundless murderous intent suddenly enveloped Han Fei's body. A pair of black wings with a wingspan of 100 meters roared towards the sky. In Han Fei's mind, DK said, "Heavenly Fiend Battle Body." Han Fei was shocked. It wasn't that he hadn't considered using the power of the Emperor Sparrow. However, the Emperor Sparrow hadn't become a supremacy yet. He reckoned that it was only a half supremacy. No matter how powerful the Emperor Sparrow was, it was impossible for him to face the king's heavenly tribulation as a half venerate, right? However, the D Sparrow had taken the initiative to appear at this moment. Innate battle physique. Phew, this time, Han Fei didn't absorb energy, but when he activated the innate battle physique, he couldn't help but gasp. Han Fei seemed to feel that there were thousands of troops behind him. He felt that he had set foot on the wild land. Han Fei felt that infinite terrifying murderous intent was bursting out of his body. At this moment, the heavenly fiend body in Han Fei's eyes didn't seem scary anymore. Han Fei's yin-yang divine eyes were gone. Instead, a pair of black pupils appeared. Eye of disaster. A crimson murderous intent burst out of Han Fei's eyes. The Emperor Sparrow's voice vaguely appeared in Han Fei's mind. Are you simulating the heavenly fiend again? The power of the heavenly tribulation hasn't changed for years. Do you know, I am the heavenly fiend? Chirp, Han Fei opened his mouth, and two intertwined streams of power, one clear and one yellow, rose to the sky. It was exactly the heavenly fiend aura that was formed by a wisp of immortal spiritual energy and murderous intent that Han Fei had accumulated. As soon as the attack was launched, a ball seemed to rise to the sky from the red pillar of lightning. Even the heavenly tribulation couldn't stop it. The power of the heavenly fiend aura went straight to the sky. Then, it turned into a huge ripple, shaking this place for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. At this moment, the world was eclipsed, and the sun and moon lost their light. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be caught in a hazy white mist. The heavenly tribulation was gone, and the last sentence that Han Fei heard in his mind was, "You are not strong enough." After a long time, everyone came back to themselves. At the moment when they came back to themselves, Xia Shaochan, Ren Tianfei, and the others forced themselves to look at the sky despite the tears in their eyes, until Xia Shaochan saw that above the divine palace, Han Fei's figure was standing proudly in midair. The surrounding spiritual energy was intertwined and poured into his body. Around Han Fei, there was a dazzling glow, which was the manifestation of the power of the Great Path. Xia Shaochan let out a long breath. This bastard, he only knows how to show off. He's so annoying. Xia Shaochan complained, and Luo Xiaobai and the others were relieved. Now, all of them had tears streaming down their faces. Not because they were crying, but because they were stung by the white light. After all, with their strength, they really couldn't take it. Ren Tianfei cursed, "Brat, you scared me." However, that thing can even survive the heavenly tribulation. Has he comprehended the indestructible divine body? No, I have to ask him later. Seeing that Xia Shaochan and Ren Tianfen were both relieved, everybody realized what was going on. Old Bai laughed loudly. "Ha, the Thug Academy has a king." Old Jiang shouted, "I've raised a king." Jiang Qin glanced at Old Jiang. "Okay, don't flatter yourself. Why don't you teach another one?" Old Jiang snorted. "Girl, don't argue with me." After another few hundred minutes, the 7 major sects finally realized what was going on. The Heavenly Sword Master said to Tanggu via voice transmission, "He has become a king." Tanggu grinned with joy from the bottom of his heart. Jiao Mengyue, Zi Luo, and the others were all horrified at this moment. Zi Luo said, "Go back and tell everyone in the Forest of Horrors that from today on, they should all behave themselves and sincerely surrender. This person is too strong. Even if the Forest of Horrors has a king in the future, they will still be no match for him." Jiao Mengyue heaved a long sigh and patted Niu Dali's shoulder. "Dali, don't think about it. If he were really a bull, it would be fine. However, he is a human. Now, he is a real king, the master of the yin-yang heaven." While everyone was exclaiming, Han Fei was amazed by another thing. When he focused on the heavenly tribulation, he found that his gourd was hovering in his origin sea. His origin sea, on the other hand, had turned into Forge the Universe. Han Fei was stunned. When I transcended the 8th level of the heavenly tribulation, the origin sea was only 100 kilometers in size. How did it become forge the universe in the blink of an eye? Han Fei tried to confirm it again and again. He found that when his mind was immersed in the Tao seed, he directly entered forge the universe. No, he entered the origin sea. And when he wanted to directly enter forge the universe from his mind, it was useless. So, did I open up the origin sea or didn't I? However, Han Fei still sensed something wrong after a sweep of his perception. He scanned with his perception and found that the size of this origin sea had reached a radius of 6,000 kilometers. In terms of diameter, it was more than 12,000 kilometers. Han Fei's eyelids twitched wildly for a while. Although surprised, Han Fei thought of another thing. If forge the universe had become his origin sea, could he let others enter the origin sea? Han Fei felt that he had to find someone to try this idea. If it was possible, it would be terrible. In his origin sea, time was accelerated 32 times. 1 year of cultivation here was equivalent to 32 years in the outside world. How could this be a joke? Of course, he had to try it later. At this time, Han Fei felt that the power in his body was changing. It was no longer spiritual energy transforming his body, but a Taoist aura nourishing his body. This was the Taoist aura of a strong master born by himself, the power of the Great Path. Han Fei felt that he could see 500,000 kilometers at a glance. At this moment, he felt that in the thousand-star city, countless people were exclaiming, praying, asking, and sighing. In an instant, there was too much information that could be gathered in his mind. Only then did Han Fei understand what the old turtle said. A king could monitor the world. What he said was not false. Han Fei heard his name from the mouths of countless people. In fact, he could even follow a certain voice and instantly descend with his divine senses to talk to only him. Just like how he heard Zhou Ling's soft voice among the countless voices, "I knew you would become a king." "Congratulations, wait for me too." Han Fei could see Zhou Ling facing the dazzling white light with tears streaming down her face, but she didn't care. Han Fei saw Su Yang kneeling on the ground on the Pure Sun Island and saying with a trembling voice, "Patriarch, we won the bet. The best decision we made in our lives was to send Daji and Su Sanqian to the Thug Academy. Now, Marshal Han has become a king. One day, the Su family might also give birth to a true expert." Outside the ideal palace, Han Fei heard Ren Tianfei and old Jiang showing off that he was their disciple. Apart from this, Han Fei sensed that there was a dragon ball hidden underground at the original site of the ideal palace. Sensing Han Fei's gaze, the Azure Dragon said leisurely, "Congratulations on transcending the tribulation and becoming a king. I hope you keep your promise." Han Fei directly replied, "Of course. I won't go back on my promise to you." At this moment, Han Fei was also very excited. He had just transcended the tribulation, and there were still many things to consider. He still needed to consolidate his strength. Han Fei immediately focused his mind, and his information appeared in his mind. Owner Han Fei's level greater than 90, see expansion. See family tree 1321219, chaotic energy greater than 5226 wisps, spiritual power 479988, perception range greater than 500,000 kilometers, power greater than 125,694 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 80. Second spiritual beast, Emperor Sparrow, level 80. Main art, Void Descent, level 7 of Void Fishing, King level, Divine Quality. Chapter 1888. When he saw this information, Han Fei was overjoyed. Finally, God rewarded those who tried. His strength could be said to have skyrocketed by more than several times. In terms of strength alone, he had tripled. He remembered what old Yuan said, what's his strength after the sea expansion? More than 80,000 waves. This was already beyond the reach of ordinary people. What about himself? A full 120,000 waves. With a little cultivation, 130,000 waves was not a problem. With this strength, if he entered the chaotic sea again, what top 10 pirate groups? What North Black Ice? What wind-heart orchid? He wasn't afraid of any of them. Of course, apart from the increase in strength, Han Fei also found that his bloodline had doubled in power. This time, it really doubled. From 2.72 million to 1.32 million, a terrifying increase of 1.4 million. Gulp, Han Fei swallowed hard. Han Fei knew that 1.32 million should be an extremely terrifying number. He had to go through such a terrifying heavenly tribulation to reach this rank. It could be seen how many strong bloodlines there were in the sea expansion realm. The list of the 10,000 races in the sea also made Han Fei realize that he was not the top existence among the 10,000 races in the sea. Therefore, he had to continue to work hard. At this time, the simplest way was to swallow the bloodline directly. At this time, Han Fei's heart thumped, and information appeared. 10,000 races in the sea, 296202223 owner, 1321219 nearby bloodlines, Ancient Azure Dragon, Time Dragon Carp, Golden Crow Divine Blood, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Emperor Sparrow, Hexagon Starfish recommended bloodline, Ancient Azure Dragon. When he saw this information, the corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. The most suitable bloodline for this ranking was actually the bloodline of the Ancient Azure Dragon. This meant that the bloodline of the Hexagon Starfish was even stronger than that of the Ancient Azure Dragon. This was quite beyond Han Fei's expectation. The Hexagon Starfish basically didn't cultivate at all, but relied on inheritance. It relied on the clam girl to massage it. If it hadn't met Han Fei and given it a beating every now and then, this guy might still be lying on the bed. In terms of enjoyment, no one could surpass the Hexagon Starfish. But this guy's bloodline was stronger than the Ancient Azure Dragons? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised by this. Just what level were these mysterious creatures at? Han Fei had encountered a mysterious one before. However, compared with Mr. Hexagon Starfish, Little Black, and Little White, they were far inferior. Now, the Emperor Sparrow had also become mysterious. The Arch Sparrow was the most ferocious beast in the primordial world. He was a freak who had led a group of vicious beasts to wage war against divine beasts for 3,000 years. But was this guy also going to turn mysterious? I wonder what's so good about the mystery category. Thinking of the Emperor Sparrow, Han Fei was shocked. In the last heavenly tribulation, the Emperor Sparrow helped him kill the extraterrestrial devil? Based on what the Arch Sparrow had said, it was a heavenly demon? Was this guy a devil? It was only a demigod. Wait a minute. Han Fei looked again, only to find that the Emperor Sparrow was already level 80. Did he become a venerable one? When did he become a venerable? Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Did this guy swallow the lightning tribulation when he fused with the Emperor Sparrow? So, he directly became a venerable? He had already caught up with Little Black and Little White. Han Fei was speechless. At this speed, would this guy also become a king in a few years? In addition to the improvement of his strength and the ranking of the 10,000 races in the sea, Han Fei found that his soul power had increased by about 100,000 points. Compared to his strength, the improvement of his soul power wasn't much. His strength had tripled, and his soul power had increased by about 30%. However, Han Fei was already very satisfied. After all, he had just entered the Pioneer Sea realm. Once he stabilized his power as a king, his combat power would be much more than what he saw on the surface. After reading this basic information, Han Fei sensed that what he had in his body was actually spiritual energy. However, the quality of the spiritual energy was vastly different from before. Moreover, it was the Taoist rhyme that led the flow of the pure spiritual qi, the Taoist rhyme that was born within him. All of a sudden, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Why did his chaotic energy increase instead of decrease? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Wouldn't the chaotic energy be consumed during the tribulation? Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, can you hear me?" The old turtle's voice sounded leisurely. "I can hear you. When the heavenly tribulation appeared, I restrained all my aura. This is the pure yang lightning. If I have a trace of it, I'm afraid I'll be directly struck into ashes." In fact, the old turtle was also amazed. How on earth did this guy survive a heavenly tribulation of this level? When the old turtle saw the purple lightning and the bright red lightning all over the sky, he even felt that he was going to die. He even wanted to remind Han Fei not to resist it head-on. Who would have thought that Han Fei actually dared to resist it head-on? Needless to say, Han Fei's strength, soul power, perception, and all other aspects at this moment were much stronger than when he was at the beginning. Because Han Fei resisted it head-on, he absorbed the most power of the heavenly tribulation. In this world, how many people could do this? However, Han Fei didn't care about this. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, what's going on with my origin sea?" The old turtle said, "Well, I don't know. Your gourd world has merged with the origin sea. Or rather, the two are originally connected." You might as well ask the gourd. I really can't answer this. Han Fei asked, "But what?" The old turtle said, "If the space of the gourd becomes the origin sea, this should be a great thing. In the origin sea, you are the master. Unlike in the space of the gourd, you can even use the time here. Of course, it can only be determined according to the range of time acceleration in the space of the gourd. You can't exceed it or shorten it." Han Fei couldn't help but think, sure enough, the time acceleration in the origin sea has become 10 times faster. However, Han Fei was only surprised for a while. Thinking about it carefully, he realized that this was a skill for accumulation. My own origin sea, I can definitely be in a state of full acceleration. Han Fei said again, "Old Yuan, this origin sea is mine. In that case, can I enter the origin sea to cultivate now?" The old turtle nodded. Of course. The origin sea is everyone's most mysterious place. Of course, when you come in, you need to be in a state of absolute silence and calm your mind. Unlike before, you can easily enter the space of the gourd as long as you have 3 seconds. Huh? Is that so? Han Fei couldn't help but frown. If this was the case, it would be inconvenient for him to escape. If it was in a battle, it would not be as convenient as before. Therefore, he had to be more careful in the future. Han Fei asked, "So, when I enter the origin sea, others can't perceive it, right?" The old turtle nodded. Theoretically, yes, because others can't find your origin sea. However, when you enter the origin sea, the spatial node you left is fixed. So, you can only come out from there. Besides, if there is really an extremely strong master of the Tao of space, it is possible to directly dig out your origin sea from the spatial node. Han Fei's heart sank. It seems that I can't use the origin sea randomly in the future during the war. Otherwise, it will be easy to be ambushed. If I can't beat them, I'm afraid I'm doomed. Han Fei asked, "One last question, why is the chaotic chi still there?" The old turtle explained, "The chaotic chi is used to support the existence of the origin sea. The more chaotic chi there is, the more the origin sea looks like a normal small world. And a normal small world can not only store your own Tao, but also generate new power of Tao and feed it back to you in case of emergencies." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "You sound like you're creating a world." At this moment, above the Yin-Yang Palace, the energy and spiritual energy that were originally used to support the Eye of Heavenly Path had basically been swallowed by Han Fei. Those that hadn't been swallowed had basically dissipated with the blazing white mist. It could be said that on this day, the spiritual energy and energy above the Thousand-Star City were nearly 10 times denser. Anyone who was smart would have already sat cross-legged and cultivated at this moment. In the Thousand-Star City, there were countless people who had made breakthroughs. Han Fei looked at the desolate palace and then at the courtyard protected by the heaven and earth natural array. Han Fei held the pestle in his hand and suddenly found that he seemed to be able to use the real power of the heaven and earth natural array. At this moment, Han Fei's eyes and even his brain were spinning much faster than before. At this moment, through the seal, Han Fei found that a map had appeared in the heaven and earth natural array. This was a map of the entire Yin-Yang heaven. According to the location of this map, Han Fei found that this thing seemed to be real-time. In other words, it could reflect the situation of the Yin-Yang heaven in real time. This feeling made Han Fei immediately think of the sea quelling painting. Back then, he and the others were watching the changes of the stars in the sea-quelling painting. When he was looking for the star map in the pool of the floating island in the painting, as long as he thought of it, he could appear where he should appear according to the map. Han Fei thought of something, and a projection fell directly into the map. As a result, the next moment, Han Fei's projection appeared above the level 3 fishery. Sure enough. With this thing, as long as he was in the palace, with the heaven and earth natural array, he could instantly reach any place in the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei came up with a plan in his mind. The white mist didn't dissipate so quickly. Therefore, at this moment, only some people could see that Han Fei was safe and sound. Most people closed their eyes and couldn't open them, so they could only open their mouths and shout. Does anyone know what's going on? Has General Han made a breakthrough or not? I don't know. Han Fei didn't say anything either. Hey, this white mist doesn't seem to be so dazzling. I can already see some of it. Hey, look at the sky. Many people squinted or covered their eyes at this moment, looking up. They saw that the palace was surrounded by clouds and mist, full of immortal air. Han Fei thought of something, and the sound of the great Tao spread throughout the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei said, "Fellow human, I am Han Fei. I have learned a lot from this sea expansion. I boldly tell the world that I, Han Fei, call myself the human king today. Although I am happy to have the sea expansion, the human race is still in the abyss of suffering. We are still trapped in a cage. Outside the cage, there are thousands of enemies. There are kings, venerables, and countless explorers. Since I have become a king, I will naturally lead the human race to prosperity. One day, we will go to the outside world. One day, everyone in the Yin-Yang heaven will be like dragons. Roar, break the cage and go to the outside world." Human king, human king, human king. Billions of people were howling, and their power of will was gathering. Whether it was the Forest of Terror, the Undying Kingdom, or the Demon Beast Alliance, at this moment, everyone was dumbfounded, and those who were familiar with Han Fei all had a strange look on their faces. He called himself the Human King? I'm afraid only Han Fei could do this, right? Chapter 1889. 10 years later. It had been 10 years since Han Fei transcended the tribulation and became a king. The Yin-Yang heaven welcomed the first real king in its history. Most people still felt that he deserved the title of king. After all, it was Han Fei who wiped out the big clans, wiped out the sea demons, and saved mankind. Han Fei had created too many firsts. There was no one in the Yin-Yang heaven who did not know his name. Half a year after Han Fei became a king, the cage channel between the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven was completely broken, and the two realms were truly connected. The immortal city of the human clan and the demon beast alliance each migrated a group of people to the Yin-Yang heaven. In fact, everyone knew that the territory of the immortal palace was only so big and there was only so much spiritual energy. Migrating too many people was not conducive to the cultivation and development of all clans. In fact, many people were still guarding the cage in the immortal city of the human clan, the demon beast alliance, and the Forest of Terror. After all, although Han Fei killed more than 80 sea demons and even the Black Killer Snail King, there were still hundreds of sea demon venerables in the Black Blood City. The number of explorers was uncountable. How could these people not know that they were trapped in a cage and used as whetstones? These years they had been living in fear. Whether it was the Demon Beast Alliance, the immortal city of the human clan, or the Forest of Terror, they could all join the human race or establish diplomatic relations with the human race. However, the sea demons couldn't. The sea demons were born to oppose all clans. In the past, the reason why they could establish diplomatic relations with the Forest of Terror was mainly because the number of strong cultivators in the Forest of Terror was small and they were threatened by the Demon Beast Alliance. And they had to find a force to ally with. Now, the Forest of Terror didn't care about the Black Blood City at all. And in the past 10 years, when countless people were immersed in the wonderful life of increasing spiritual energy and accelerating cultivation, they didn't know that there were dozens of more cracks in the cage. And this meant that the cage was really slowly collapsing. The conclusion that Han Fei gave was that the cage would collapse within 100 years. But now, with the increase of cracks, the number of 100 years would inevitably be advanced. Of course, there were disadvantages and advantages. In the past 10 years, the overall spiritual energy level of the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven had more than tripled. The increase of spiritual energy more than tripled meant that the number of human cultivators was increasing. The potential and spiritual heritage of humans were improving. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai was really in charge of the mansion. At this moment, someone was reporting, "Marshal, according to the latest batch of data, we tested all the children between the ages of 8 and 10 in the 1,000-star city and the 36 towns and made a shocking discovery. The children with spiritual pulse level 2 and below accounted for less than 20% of the total. As for the children below the age of 8, we tested them in batches. We found that the later they were born, the higher the grade of their spirit meridians. Our human race will usher in a new rise." Luo Xiaobai slightly nodded. "Continue the census. Be it the 1,000-star city or the 36 towns, set up a special branch to collect the latest data in real time." "Yes, Marshal." Right at this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Report! Marshal, it's urgent." Luo Xiaobai said, "Come in." A young man in the explorer level hurried through the door. Ignoring the fact that there were still people around, he immediately said, "Commander, another crack has appeared on the wall of death in the north. It's more than 300 meters tall and 40 meters wide." Before Luo Xiaobai said anything, the person who was in the meeting just now couldn't help but be shocked. "So big?" Luo Xiaobai took a deep breath and said, "Got it. I'll deal with this matter personally. Continue patrolling and report to me immediately if there's any situation." "Yes, Marshal." After the two of them left, Luo Xiaobai sat on the chair and rubbed her eyebrows slightly. Everyone could slack off, but she couldn't. Yin-yang heaven had just ushered in a turning point for the rise of the human race. At this important moment, the problem of the wall of death was getting more and more serious. Thud, thud, Luo Xiaobai said indifferently, "Come in." Luo Xiaobai had just perked up, but she saw that no one came in. But in the next moment he felt a pair of ice-cold hands covering his eyes. Luo Xiaobai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "When did you come out of seclusion?" "Childish. If I were as strong as you, I would definitely have discovered you immediately." Giggle, "Who else could it be but Xia Shaochan?" She said, "I asked you to resign from your position as the Supreme Commander, but you refused. How tiring is it to stay here every day?" Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes at Xia Shaochan and said, "It's not that I don't want to, but the situation is so serious that I can't let my guard down. If the cage is broken, the chaotic ocean will not be able to stop the experts from the outside world. At that time, if we encounter those powerful enemies from the outside world, the human race may still not survive this disaster. By the way, you've come out of seclusion. Where is our master human king?" Xia Shaochan said, "He went to seal the crack, and by the way, he went to see the 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the others. How are they doing in the cage?" Luo Xiaobai immediately closed the stack of documents on the table and said, "Let's go. I'll give myself half a day off and go back to school." Xia Shaochan said, "I'm here to call you. Zhang Xuanyu and Lurenquang have also come out of seclusion and are waiting for you." Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but be surprised. "What day is it today? Why are you all out of seclusion?" Xia Shaochan said, "I'll tell you later. Look at how busy you are now, and the pressure on you is so heavy. You should be more active. It's best if you can find a boy that you like. Then your daily life will be interesting." The corners of Luo Xiaobai's mouth twitched. "I'm different from you. I'm not interested in love." Xia Shaochan nodded. Yes, 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 you are a woman who wants to become infinitely stronger. You want to become a king as soon as possible. It's been 10 years. You've accumulated a lot of power of will, haven't you? Why are you only a peak-level intermediate venerable?" Luo Xiaobai smiled slightly. "Of course I'm cultivating the pure mystic body. After 10 years of polishing, I feel that I've reached the limit of the intermediate venerable. As for Lun Kuang and Zhang Xuanyu, they are cultivating with the help of star beads. What realm are they in now? Xia Xiaochan said, you'll know in a moment. Thug Academy. The Thug Academy at this time was no longer the Thug Academy of the past. Even when Renyu and Xiao Zhan had now reached the Explorer realm. After all, none of the students who could enter the Thug Academy were weak. Although when Renyu and Xiao Zhan were not the strongest, as teachers, ordinary people couldn't compare to them. Now they had at least 30 people with them, and they were cultivating. These 30 people were all the best seedlings that Old Jiang, Jiang Chao, and the others had plundered from the Thousand-Star City and the 36 towns. Today, the Thug Academy on the Scattered Stars Island had become their permanent residence. When Luo Xiaobai and Xia Xiaochan passed by their training ground, many people exclaimed, "It's Senior Sister Luo." Senior Sister Luo now has a domineering aura on her. I don't dare to approach her. Huh? Who's that next to Senior Sister Luo? Someone immediately patted him on the shoulder. Idiot, that's Senior Sister Xiaochun. Who else could be so intimate with Senior Sister Luo and even talk so cheerfully and wittily? Huh? Senior Sister Martial God? Didn't she say that she went into seclusion with Senior Brother Renwang? Why did she come out today? Someone exclaimed, Senior Sister Xiaochan has come out of seclusion. Where's Senior Brother Han Fei? Someone frowned. What's Senior Brother Han Fei? He's Senior Brother Renwang. Someone whispered, let me tell you, I saw Senior Brother Yu and Senior Brother Kuang today. Do you think that today is the day of their gathering? Someone suggested, shall we sneak over and have a look? Smack, as soon as this person said so, he saw a slap in the face. The student who spoke was stunned by the slap. Smack. Do you want to sneak away? Who gave you the guts? Smack. One must not be impatient in cultivation. As soon as your senior brother and senior sister show up, their souls are gone. The boy covered his head, twisted his body, and turned into dozens of shadows. He said, Mr. Xiao Zhan, I know I was wrong. I just said it casually. Smack, a fishing line swept across, and dozens of shadows were wiped out in an instant. Then, another slap came down. You're still hiding? Do you think you can escape? At this moment, suddenly, the void shook, and a figure walked out of the void. The newcomer smiled and said, Hey, Mr. Xiao Zhan, are you in class? Seeing the newcomer, Xiao Zhan grinned and said, just like you, disobedient and troublemakers. If I don't teach you, you won't become useful people. Seeing those junior brothers and sisters who were shocked and full of admiration, Han Fei couldn't help but smile. You have to listen to Mr. Xiao Zhan's words. He is a teacher who has taught kings. Think carefully. Xiao Zhan immediately blushed and said, Are you trying to embarrass me? Go, 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 the two girls have just left. Go and have a gathering. Han Fei nodded with a smile and then said, Oh, just now, I went to the cage and brought you a Buddha Black Mountain conch. I left it here for you. After that, Han Fei waved his hand, and the huge conch corpse, which was 70 or 80 meters long, rolled to the ground, causing the ground to shake with a bang. Xiao Zhan curled his lips and said, Can I hunt it myself? Do I need you to bring it to me? Han Fei chuckled and disappeared to the backyard of the academy. Xiao Zhan walked to the Black Mountain Luo and knocked him twice. With a wave of his hand, he put away the Black Mountain conch. He couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. This brat must know that he was about to make a breakthrough. So, he deliberately got this thing back. This Buddha Black Mountain conch was a big conch in the semi-venerable realm. With his current strength, even if he went with one Renyu, he might not be able to defeat it. He would probably have to ask Wang Dashui and the others to help him. Brat, you're really considerate. Mr. Xiao Zhan, can we have a holiday today? Someone said this, and Xiao Zhan's face immediately became serious. A holiday? Was your head hit by an iron headfish? The wall of death is full of cracks, and you still want a holiday? The man muttered, Senior Brother Han Fei, can we get together occasionally? Xiao Zhan immediately scolded with a smile. If you become a king, I won't care about you. No, If you can become a venerable, I won't care about you. Now, get ready to go to sea with me. Chapter 1890. In the backyard of the Thug Academy. When Luo Xiaobai saw Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang, she was surprised. How come you two are also peak-level mid-level venerable? Zhang Xuanyu said with a smile. Why are you also a peak-level mid-level venerable? Luo Xiaobai immediately understood. It turned out that not only was she suppressing the limit of each realm, but they were also doing the same. Luo Xiaobai couldn't help looking at Xia Shaochan. Don't tell me that you have been suppressing your realm, so you have been stuck in the half-king realm for 10 years? Xia Shaochan shrugged and said, I started earlier than you. In fact, Xia Shaochan really wanted to say that in the past 10 years, her strength was at its lowest, almost falling below the venerable realm. She had to take a lot of effort to fix it. Old Jiang said, Little fatty, come here and get some food. Lu Renkuang responded, Yes, I'm coming. At this moment, Old Bai was holding a handful of peanuts in his hand, chewing them while saying, We were wandering. Why did you call us back? Xia Shaochan said, Wait for Han Fei to come back. He has something to say. Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, Why? Did he comprehend some ultimate skill again? Suddenly, a voice said leisurely, Ultimate skill? I didn't comprehend it. Did you comprehend it? Zhang Xuanyu immediately responded, Huh, you don't say. In the past few years, I have fused the great techniques together and created a set of self-strengthening staff techniques. Let's have a fight later. You don't have to fight with me. Now, my moves are full of Taoist aura. It's useless except for feeding you moves. However, if you want to fight, it's still possible. Zhang Xuanyu said, You mean in the cage? Over the years, as many as 10 venerables have died in my hands. If it weren't for Little White forcibly forbidding me from entering the cage, I would have killed them all. Believe it or not. Luo Xiaobai immediately said grumpily, Those people in the Black Blood City are for others to gain experience. If you kill them all, what else can they do? Zhang Xuanyu shrugged. It can't be helped. Now, the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven are in harmony. The Waterwood Heaven is our friend, the Demon Beast Alliance is our friend, and the Immortal City is our friend. Even the Forest of Terror has surrendered. Who else can we find to fight other than Black Blood City? Apart from the Black Blood City, the venerables of the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven basically have nothing to do now. Apart from Black Blood City, the venerables of the Yin-Yang Heaven and Waterwood Heaven basically have nothing else to do. Han Fei scoffed. Nonsense, the venerable realm requires a lot of cultivation. Is the disassembly rate of spiritual energy very high? Have you comprehended all the battle skills? I have nothing to do every day. Tian Bai Bai White In Bai, how many venerables do we have now? Chen Yi, there are Ping, White Yi. As for the explorers, there were more than 2,000 of them. Then, Bai White said. Old Jiang said, Don't just stand there and chat. Come and make dumplings. They chatted while making dumplings. Everyone, including Luo Xiaobai, the marshal, and Han Fei, the human king, took action. Where are Nian and Inu? Didn't you meet them when you went to the cage? While making dumplings, Han Fei said, Now, the concentration of spiritual energy in the Yin-Yang Heaven is getting higher and higher. However, there are more and more strong masters. Therefore, the spiritual energy is obviously not enough. In another 10 years, there will be a lot of strong masters, right? Luo Xiaobai said, If the wall of death continues to transmit spiritual energy to the Yin-Yang Heaven, with the current growth rate and the spiritual heritage of the newborns, I conservatively estimate that there will be 50,000 to 100,000 explorers. The number of human venerables will probably increase to about 80. Han Fei said, What if someone is going through a king tribulation? Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Han Fei. A king tribulation? Han Fei said, In the Waterwood Heaven, Jing, has become a king tribulation. Xiong Chaoshui of the Demon Beast Alliance has become a king tribulation. Luo Xiaobai and the others all knew what Han Fei was talking about. However, the strong masters of the Yin-Yang heaven were basically in the big clans. And the big clans were basically wiped out by Han Fei. Therefore, when someone was going through a king tribulation, the Yin-Yang heaven could only watch. Han Fei said, Tang Yen is going through a king tribulation. He will succeed. Hearing that it was Tang Yen, everyone nodded and didn't seem surprised. Luo Xiaobai asked, then what about Tang Gu? Everyone knew that Han Fei and Tang Gu were good friends. In the past few years, Tang Gu had also made rapid progress. Especially after finding the path of swordsmanship, he also had the strength to fight across realms. This was the horror of a sword cultivator. Han Fei said, I went to see Tang Gu. He said that he cultivated swordsmanship and cut off Tang Yan's memory. From now on, he is himself, and Tang Yan is Tang Yan. So, it's not a big problem. Luo Xiaobai asked, so, you came out this time because Tang Yan is going to have a king tribulation? Han Fei nodded. That's part of the reason. Zhang Xuanyu, what about the other part? Han Fei smiled slightly. I want to go out. Wow, everyone couldn't help but stop what they were doing. Luo Xiaobai's eyelids twitched. If you go out now, will the cage collapse immediately? Han Fei said, Xiaobai. This place can't withstand many people's king tribulations. This time it's Tang Yen, next time it will definitely be Chao Tianji's turn. As the population increases, the cultivation speed increases, and the various clans in the cage cultivate crazily. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for 100 years. Old Bai said, you mean you want to take some people out? Han Fei nodded slightly. In addition to the few of us, I'm going to preach in the 2 worlds and all clans. Preach. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Everyone in the Thug Academy had enjoyed the preaching that Han Fei was talking about. Although as soon as they heard Han Fei's preaching, they would feel sleepy and then fall asleep. However, every time they fell asleep and woke up, they could feel that they had more or less gained something. Among them, the greatest benefit was that after Han Fei preached many times, the spiritual energy dismantling rate of Zhang Xuanyu and the others had reached 90%. Han Fei was sure that as long as he preached more, they would eventually gain something. In fact, when he preached for the Venerable Emperor, his spiritual energy dismantling rate had directly increased to 100%. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't know how to dismantle spiritual energy, but that they lacked someone who could dismantle spiritual energy 100% to teach them more. Luo Xiaobai was slightly surprised. Who are you going to target this time? Han Fei pondered for a moment. All the venerables in the 2 worlds. Luo Xiaobai said, that's too few. A total of 542 people. How about adding venerables, peak stage venerables, and semi-venerables? Han Fei couldn't help but ask in surprise, how many people will that be? Luo Xiaobai nodded. It's simple. Just select 10,000 people. I'll do it in one day. Han Fei was stunned for a while. What? Old Bai asked in surprise, are you going to take them all away? Han Fei shook his head. Of course not. We can't just sit and wait for the cage to break. To put it bluntly, no matter how many explorers there are below the Venerable Realm, it's useless. We can't be satisfied with creating a force comparable to the immortal palaces in the outside world in 100 years. At that time, the immortal palaces in the outside world will join forces to kill us. Maybe we can successfully take over all the humans in the Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven. Of course, it may also be a massacre. Everyone's hearts sank. What Han Fei was worried about was the future of the Yin-Yang Heaven. As Han Fei said, it was indeed time to go out. Luo Xiaobai said, I'll do it. Your reputation in the Waterwood Heaven is also high enough. The quality of the people who will attend this sermon won't be bad. Han Fei said, by the way, pass your position as the Supreme Commander back to Xue Shenqi. Old Xue has been managing the Scattered Stars Island for a long time and is very stable. There won't be any big mistakes. Of course, unless you don't want to go outside. Luo Xiaobai said, go. Even if I continue to serve as the Supreme Commander, I still can't save the entire human race. The way is not here. If there are thousands of years and enough resources, Maybe the yin-yang heaven can rise again. But we don't. Luo Xiaobai seemed to have put down a heavy burden in her heart, and she actually smiled. No one knew the overall situation of the yin-yang heaven better than she did. The growth of the yin-yang heaven came too fast. It was like a dry desert, crazily absorbing the moisture of rain. There were even towering trees snatching water resources. If this went on, the spiritual energy in this place could no longer be increased. Unless more cracks appeared in the cage, which would inevitably lead to the cage breaking earlier. Luo Xiaobai said, "I'm going now." Xia Xiaochun shouted, "Don't worry. Go after dinner. It's a big deal. Do you think it's just a matter of time?" Old Jiang snorted and said, "This matter, it's up to Han Fei and Xiaochun. Also, someone has to stay behind to guard it. Old Bai and I are too old. Even if we can make another breakthrough, it will be extremely difficult for us to transcend the tribulation and become kings. However, we can still take care of the Scattered Stars Island." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Tang Yan also has to stay. We can't give him resources to become a king for nothing. He has to do something. And that Chao Tianji also needs someone to keep him in check." Old Jiang said, "You, as a human king, can think about these things. Now, don't discuss these things. After dinner, you can deal with it." Han Fei. Chapter 1891. Half a day later. Over the Scattered Stars Island, the sky bloomed. Luo Xiaobai announced her departure and returned the Scattered Stars Island to Shueishanqi, which caused a stir. The next day at noon, on the Scattered Stars Island, in the Thousand-Star City, and in the 36 towns, people were talking about Luo Xiaobai's departure. Someone sighed and said, "It's a pity. Marshal Luo is actually very good. Although he is a little indifferent, the policies he promulgated and the institutions he set up are really for the people." Someone said, "Marshal Luo is very popular. The reason why the human king is famous is that he liberated the human race, destroyed the sea demons, and slaughtered the major clans. But in the revitalization of the human race, it's all thanks to Marshal Luo." Someone said, "Why did he return to Marshal Shue's hands?" Someone guessed, "It's probably because Marshal Luo hasn't been in office for a long time and hasn't found a satisfactory person to take over. But what I'm wondering is, since he hasn't found anyone to take over, why doesn't he spend more time looking for or training someone?" Just as the crowd was discussing the matter, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in the sky. The voice said, "Yin-yang heaven, all human race comrades, I'm Han Fei, the human king. Today, I have 3 things to announce." Wow! Human king? The human king has spoken? It's been 10 years. This is the first time the human king has spoken. Don't be noisy. Listen. In the sky, Han Fei's voice shook. In the past 10 years, the spiritual energy of our yin-yang heaven has been increasing, the strength of our human race has been increasing, and the number of our experts has been increasing. Our human race is rising. However, the reason behind our rise is because this cage is collapsing. Now, everyone should be familiar with the so-called 36 mysterious heavens. Yes, there are many enemies outside waiting for me. I can't just sit and wait for death. Therefore, I'm prepared to head out of the cage and form alliances to find a place for the human race to live in the outside world 100 years later. Indeed, in the past few years, Luo Xiaobai had intentionally or unintentionally revealed the term chaotic ocean. Once a matter was publicized as a secret, then while this secret was no longer a secret, it would definitely draw the curiosity of most cultivators. At this moment, as soon as Han Fei said this, the hearts of countless people shook. They knew where Han Fei was going. It was definitely the chaotic ocean. It was a world that was said to be filled with kings and venerables. Someone sighed. His Majesty the human king is devoted to the people and carries the fate of billions of people on his shoulders. How can we enjoy ourselves in peace? We should constantly strive to improve ourselves. Someone's face was full of longing. I really hope to accompany Lord Human King to conquer the outer realms. Someone was speechless. Why don't you take a look at yourself? What's the use of hoping? A young man's eyes were filled with worship. Human king is invincible. One day I will be like a sovereign personage, conquering the outer realms. In the voices of billions of people, Han Fei continued, in addition to this news, I have a few things to do before I leave. The first thing I'll do is to spend 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones in the chaotic Azure Sea. In addition, I have already set up 10 great treasure troves in the Yin-Yang Heaven Sea region. Inside are many of my great techniques, cultivation experiences, weapons and equipment. I have already scattered the treasure maps throughout the world. Everyone, first come, first served. Work hard to grow. What? 10 great treasure troves? 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones? Swish, swish, swish. Everyone only saw that above the sky was full of meteors, scattering in all directions. In the Level 3 fishery, the major fisheries of the 36 towns, outside the scattered stars island, in the 1,000-star city, supreme-grade spirit stones streaked across the sky and fell. Oh, His Majesty is really generous. At this moment, a young man looked up only to see a meteor smashing towards him. At this moment, someone was fishing only to see a meteor fall into the water beside him. At this moment, there were even marine creatures gathered on the surface of the sea, waiting for the meteor to fall from the sky. Han Fei didn't intend to distribute all the supreme-grade spirit stones to human beings. If human beings became stronger without enough stepping stones, how could they really grow? Therefore, even if a large part of the supreme-grade spirit stones were taken by marine creatures, it was actually improving the overall strength of the Yin-Yang Heaven in a disguised way. Anyway, the moment Han Fei threw the treasures, the entire Yin-Yang Heaven went crazy. In the Forest of Terror, the venerables were speechless. Zi Luo exclaimed, 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones? Is the human king crazy? Qianlong asked, with so many supreme-grade spirit stones, it should be enough to create a king, right? The Sea clan replied, if he can pass the heavenly tribulation, it should be possible. Zi Luo, are you sure? Zi Luo shook her head slightly. I dare not. At this moment, when many people were looking around, trying to find the nearest supreme-grade spirit stone, Han Fei said, the second thing, the Yin-Yang Heaven is about to welcome a second heavenly tribulation expert. His name is Tang Yen, and he will undergo the heavenly tribulation outside the scattered stars island tomorrow. Everyone can come and watch the heavenly tribulation. What? It's only been 10 years, and another expert is going to undergo the heavenly tribulation? Tang Yen? Who is Tang Yen? No matter who it is, we humans are now short of kings. As long as someone becomes a king, it's always a good thing. I wonder if he can survive the heavenly tribulation tomorrow. Last time, when a human king underwent the heavenly tribulation, the terrifying scene was really unimaginable. Someone said, in fact, on the Shuemu heaven, it is said that 2 kings have succeeded in transcending the heavenly tribulation. Now, on the Shuemu heaven side, it is said that there are 3 kings. Our Yin-Yang heaven currently only has 1 human king, which is obviously not enough. Now that the human king is going to the outer domain, we naturally need a king to continue to guard the Yin-Yang heaven. This second thing also caused a heated discussion. However, everyone was basically scrambling and searching for top-grade spirit stones. After all, things like sea expansion and heavenly tribulation had nothing to do with most people. Most people just wanted to take a small step forward in their strength, and then another small step forward. Most people couldn't even see the heavenly tribulation of a king. Han Fei just casually mentioned Tang Yan's heavenly tribulation. Han Fei believed that there was no possibility of Tang Yan failing. After all, he had experienced 2 king heavenly tribulations. This time, Han Fei would be watching. There was no way he would fail. In fact, the loss of soul connection with Tanggu actually had a great impact on Tang Yan, and Han Fei actually compensated Tang Yan. Of course, Han Fei didn't tell Tanggu about this. Of course, even if Tang Yan didn't fail, he would have no chance to reincarnate in the future. This time, it should be his limit. However, this guy's combat power was not to be underestimated. A guy who could pass the heavenly tribulation under the eye of the Great Path 3 times in a row and almost succeeded, This kind of person couldn't be weak after becoming a king. Han Fei paused and continued, "The third thing, I will preach at the Empyrean waterfall on the Scattered Stars Island in 3 days. All the peak-level explorers and above can participate in the selection. Only 10,000 people will be selected." Preach? Among some ordinary cultivators, someone sighed. "Unfortunately, only peak-level explorers can have a chance to listen to it." Someone said, "I'm afraid ordinary people can't understand a king's lecture." Someone said regretfully, "Even if we can't understand it, we still want to go and listen." Especially on the Scattered Stars Island, someone grinned and said, "Who cares? Let's go and listen in groups. We can just sit far away. It doesn't matter whether we can understand it or not. What matters is that we can listen to the king's lecture." Someone echoed, "Yes, let's go together. But for now, let's go find ultra-quality spiritual stones." Although Han Fei's preaching also caused a stir, the most direct treasures like ultra-quality spiritual stones were everyone's first pursuit. On the sea, at this moment, whether it was the ordinary fishery, the level 1 fishery, the level 2 fishery, the level 3 fishery, or outside the Scattered Stars Island, people were crazily forming groups. Because where the fish gathered, there must be ultra-quality spiritual stones. Perhaps an ultimate-grade spirit stone was nothing, but it was something with 1,000,000 points of spiritual energy. After the popularization of information, most people had only heard of it but had never seen it. However, the gathering of the fish also represented a crisis, an omen of danger. Han Fei didn't help people avoid this danger. Everyone had walked out of life and death battles. Although he wanted to lead the human race to become stronger, no one could become stronger without experiencing any battles and experiences. This time, in the competition for resources and treasures, many people might die. However, many people would inevitably rise. Besides, this could stimulate people's blood. The top 10 treasures would probably be very popular for at least a few years. After the announcement of the 3 things, Han Fei's voice disappeared from the sky. At this moment, fishing boats were everywhere on the Scattered Stars Island. And Han Fei appeared in the 9-palace secret realm of the level 3 fishery. In the past few years, Han Fei came almost every year. The Divine Sun had been moved away by Han Fei. At present, the Divine Sun was arranged to be outside the Scattered Stars Island, at the top of the Spiritual Plant Island. Han Fei had told the Heavenly Vine and the 9-headed snake grass to take good care of the Divine Sun. In the 9-palace secret realm, the water fairy had already eaten up this space. In the center of the lake, there was a green lotus blooming quietly. And on the green lotus, a young girl was sitting cross-legged. The girl was wearing a green dress, with shoulders as smooth as jade and a slim waist. Her neck was long and her white teeth were exposed. Realizing Han Fei's arrival, the girl directly opened her eyes and said, "Master, you're here?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "Xian, I'm here today to let you out. Your strength has already reached the level of a peak-level hanging fisher. It's time to go out and gain experience." The girl suddenly jumped up and said in surprise, "Really? Can I really go out?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Of course. But remember, from the moment you go out, I won't care about you anymore. You must remember that you are a green lotus, and you have to walk a path that no one has ever walked before and no one will follow. Don't be in a hurry to cultivate. Compared with comprehending the great Tao, cultivation is actually a very simple thing. Do you remember?" The girl obviously didn't understand much. She looked aggrieved. "Master, if I go out, you won't care about me anymore?" Han Fei said, "I also have to continue to pursue my own great Tao. There are legends about me in the outside world. When you go out, you will eventually know them." "Okay." The girl suddenly said, "Master, what's your name? Otherwise, how can I know who you are?" Han Fei grinned. "My name is Han Fei." Chapter 1892. The next day, the Scattered Stars Island was crowded with people. Outside the Scattered Stars Island, strong masters gathered. This was the first time that Tang Yen really showed up in front of people. At this moment, he and Han Fei were standing on the back of the cloud whale. Tang Yen said, "My heavenly tribulation should be much worse than yours." "That's still a heavenly tribulation. Someone must guard the yin-yang heaven when I go to the chaotic ocean. I don't trust Chao Tianji." Tang Yen couldn't help but smile. "You think I can trust him? After all, you used to be the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island. Let's not talk about how he became the supreme commander. You used to be one, didn't you?" Tang Yen smiled slightly. "If you succeed in this tribulation, I will help you guard the yin-yang heaven. If the chaotic ocean is really as terrible as you say, you should leave some resources for Chao Tianji. After all, he is also a member of the yin-yang heaven. You can also take care of the purple radish in the Forest of Terror. At least, if the cage is broken, we should all have the same fate. I know what I'm doing. You'd better survive this tribulation first. By the way, your identity should be revealed. The power of faith will be of some help to the tribulation." Then Han Fei disappeared on the cloud whale. On the other side, where the masters were watching the battle, Han Fei looked at Xue Shenqi and nodded slightly. Xue Shenqi turned his hand and the sky-hanging mirror appeared. All of a sudden, the canopy in the sky bloomed. Everyone on the Scattered Stars Island immediately saw a middle-aged man standing on the cloud whale. Many people were surprised. "The cloud whale? Why is the cloud whale there? The cloud whale is not strong. Why doesn't it go away? Look, there's someone on the back of the cloud whale. Is it that Tang Yen? Who the hell is this person? Why does he take the cloud whale with him?" Suddenly, the huge cloud whale turned into a ray of light and directly disappeared between Tang Yan's eyebrows. Seeing this scene, countless people on the Scattered Stars Island were shocked. Damn, the cloud whale turns out to be his spiritual beast? It turns out that this strong man is the master of the cloud whale? No wonder. Too many people have suspected the identity of the cloud whale. It was as if this was the only one in the world. I didn't expect it to be the spiritual beast of a quasi-monarch. So, it's him. Everyone on the Scattered Stars Island knows about the cloud whale. It has also helped us a lot. I don't know how many people have come to the Scattered Stars Island. If it's this one, I'll bless him with all my heart. Tribulation is coming. After pondering for a moment, Tang Yen knew that it was time to start. Sooner or later, he would have to face this tribulation. He had already gone through 3 tribulations. If he still failed, then the heavens would punish him. Tang Yan's tribulation cloud was much smaller than Han Fei's. Because the spiritual qi in the yin-yang sky was relatively thin, the coverage was less than 5,000 miles. However, Tang Yan's tribulation this time was different from Han Fei's. When Han Fei was going through the tribulation, the quality of the spiritual energy in the yin-yang heaven was far less than this. Therefore, the terrifying scene of the lightning tribulation covering a radius of 100,000 li from time to time could not be replicated. Boom, boom, boom. Tang Yen resisted the 3 lightning bolts in a row with his body alone. Someone exclaimed, "Is Tang Yen going to learn from the human king? Is he going to overcome the heavenly tribulation with his body?" Someone said, "Even if he does, the level of the heavenly tribulation is different." When the human king was going through the tribulation cloud spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and the whole world was dark. Besides, the heavenly tribulation turned purple from the second one, and in the end, it became a line between the sky and the earth. This is simply incomparable. Someone sneered. No matter how incomparable, it's still a king's tribulation. Do you think those who can pass the king's tribulation are simple? Boom. Boom. During the 5th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen began to use the resources he had accumulated. After thousands of years, Tang Yen had accumulated a lot of spiritual fruits and earth vein essence, and he hadn't used the remaining power of faith. He successfully passed through 5 or 6 heavenly tribulations. After the 7th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen was badly mutilated. And his heavenly tribulation just showed signs of turning lavender. Tang Yen crushed a jade slip and saw a heavenly awakening divine technique descend. In an instant, the healing radiance healed the injuries on the surface of his body. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Tang Yen took out 999 stone pillars. This was the array he had prepared for himself. Boom! Under the 8th wave of the heavenly tribulation, the stone pillars formed a picture of 1,000 stars above his head. It looked like a group of twinkling stars. Many people were also surprised. However, the speed at which those stone pillars broke was also very fast. It took Tang Yen a lot of time and effort to build this peerless array. Under the 8th heavenly tribulation, only 3 pillars were left, and they were all covered with cracks. But at this moment, Tang Yen smiled, because the heavenly awakening divine technique had completely healed him. After the 8th heavenly tribulation, Tang Yen roared, and a huge bone whale appeared in the void. This was the corpse of the cloud whale that he suspected to be a king. When the 9th heavenly tribulation fell, the corpse of the cloud whale soared into the sky. Tang Yen held the sea-quelling bizarre saber and gathered power crazily. Seeing the corpse of the cloud whale being blasted into pieces, it had been more than 3 minutes, almost 4 minutes. Tang Yan's saber slashed at the lightning tribulation. Unfortunately, with a cracking sound, a crack appeared on Tang Yan's long saber. The power of the saber was completely blasted away. However, under the attack of the lavender lightning tribulation, a coiling dragon array suddenly rose. This was the top defense array that Han Fei had set up. As long as Tang Yen didn't try to withstand all the heavenly tribulations with his body like Han Fei naturally had some means to help him. Anyway, at the moment when the coiling dragon array collapsed, although a trace of the heavenly tribulation fell on Tang Yen, apart from almost collapsing his body, it couldn't really kill him. In the sky, the tribulation clouds were slowly dispersing. Tang Yan's broken body was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He had become a king. How could such a small injury be fatal? At this moment, Han Fei said, "Congratulations, Tang Yen, for successfully passing the king tribulation. Congratulations, the Yin-Yang heaven has welcomed a second king." As soon as Han Fei spoke, many people rushed to shout, "Congratulations, King Tang, for successfully passing the tribulation. Congratulations, the human race's second king. Congratulations, the Yin-Yang heaven had welcomed a second king." In fact, most people were just envious. However, at least this proved one thing. Now the Yin-Yang heaven could become a king. Countless people made up their minds to cultivate hard at this moment. Once they became a king, they would live for 10,000 years. They could roam freely in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. This was the greatest pursuit of a cultivator. At this moment, this road had been cleared. Who wouldn't be envious? Because they had been notified in advance, there were actually many people who came to watch the battle this time. The Life Queen Jing'e, Xiong Chaoshui, the 3 kings of the Shuemu heaven were also here at this moment. In fact, all the venerables of the Demon Beast Alliance, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the Immortal City had already come. After all, it was definitely not a bad idea to watch the King Tribulation. Who didn't want to become a king if they could become a venerable? When Xiong Chaoshui and Jing Er transcended their tribulations, Han Fei also helped, and Tang Yen and the others watched. Water Immortal said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Tang Yen. You've become a king." Xiong Chaoshui, "Fellow Taoist Tang Yen, your tribulation transcendence is much easier than mine." Jing Er, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Tang Yen." Tang Yen had already stabilized his strength slightly. While feeling the changes in his body, he smiled at the crowd. "After all, I have accumulated for 1,000 years, so I have some capital." However, he still had to thank Han Fei. "The sea-quelling bizarre treasures and the coiling dragon array that you helped me build are indispensable." Xiong Chaoshui muttered, "I still think that Brother Niu is more intimate." Ma Yuhun said, "Golden Tiger, and I also want to transcend the tribulation." Right now, the power of the great Tao on Shuemu Tian's side was not enough. The yin-yang sky. Before Ma Yuhun finished speaking, Chao Tianji said, "Fellow Taoist Ma, our human race still lacks a king. I estimate that in another 3 years, I will also undergo the tribulation." Everyone sighed in their hearts. When it came to transcending the tribulation, who would be willing to give way? Zi Luo and Si Bamboo were also thinking that it might not be realistic to compete with Chao Tianji. However, if there was another opportunity, they would definitely announce it as soon as possible. When the cage released more spiritual energy, they might still have a chance. Han Fei said, "Don't worry, everyone. You have all been oppressed by the heavenly Tao here for too long. In fact, whether it is talent or ability, you are not weak. I estimate that the yin-yang sky can only support the birth of one more king within 10 years. However, within 10 years, the cage can't be broken." Mu Wuhua asked, "If you leave this place, will you trigger the cage?" Han Fei said, "I don't know. Of course, I won't trigger it if I can. However, whether I trigger it or not, I must go on this trip to the chaotic ocean. This is our only hope." Xiong Chaoshui nodded. "I agree with Han Fei. If there are really so many kings and emperors in the chaotic ocean, then even if we become kings, it won't be a big deal." Jing suggested, "How about we all go?" Han Fei shook his head. "No need. What can you do even if you go? It's impossible for you to become emperors in a short time. The day after tomorrow, I will preach and select some people to go out. My purpose of selecting people is that these people have the potential to grow quickly. Moreover, these people have to be prepared to die. I can't guarantee everyone's life. How many can rise after this time? I don't know myself." Tang Yen said, "Cultivation should be like this. Who wants to succeed but doesn't want to take risks?" The Life Queen said, "When you go out this time, you should try to find those missing immortal palaces. Only with enough allies can we establish a foothold in the outside world." Han Fei nodded slightly. "That's my plan too." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.